Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Marvel. I invite the protagonists from all over the world. Chapter 81. After hearing Naruto's confirming voice, Yamato almost lost his balance and sat on the ground. How could this happen? Could it be that there was something wrong with the seal that allowed Kyuubi to escape? But that's not right. Once the tailed beast leaves the Jinchuriki will die. Naruto, do you feel uncomfortable anywhere? Quote, no, I feel very good. I have never felt better. Naruto jumped on the spot. He didn't have to be distracted to block the invasion of Nine Tails chakra. He felt that his body was much lighter. Mudden Four Pillars family. Yamato formed a seal and used wood release, and soon a wooden house was built out of thin air. Stop going first, Sakura, and give Naruto a detailed examination of his body. Sakura is Tsunade's direct disciple and currently the best medical ninja in Konoha besides Tsunade. Maybe she can find out something. Yes, Captain. Sakura nodded quickly and dragged Naruto into the house. An hour later, Sakura, who had inspected Naruto's body up and down, looked at Yamato and shook her head. Obviously, she didn't detect anything abnormal. Go back to the village and report to Lord Hokage first. Yamato sighed upon seeing this. He didn't have any clue about this situation now, so he could only go back to the village to see if Tsunade could do anything, or use the better equipment in the village to conduct a more detailed inspection. At this moment, Naruto, who was still in the blissful state where Sakura had just checked his whole body, suddenly froze, turned to Yamato and said, Captain Yamato, I feel like the Kyuubi is back. Quote question mark question mark question mark question mark quote. Yamato looked confused. At this moment, Naruto suddenly made a bang sound and turned into smoke and disappeared. Naruto. Sakura was shocked when she saw this, but fortunately Yamato was well informed. Don't panic, it's a reverse channeling technique. Naruto should have been reverse channeled by the toad in Miamu Mountain. What is this place? At Miamu Mountain, Naruto was a little dumbfounded when he looked at the unfamiliar environment around him. At this time, an orange-skinned toad fell from the sky and landed next to Naruto. Naruto, it's me. I used reverse necromancy to summon you here. This is Mount Miamu. Toadji. Naruto immediately recognized the orange toad as his psychic beast Gamakichi. Why did you bring me here? I have to rush back to the village to report on the mission. Fukasaku and Shima-sama are looking for trouble. Jiraiya-sama has also been reverse-channeled. They are all waiting for you at the temple gate. Toadji replied. It turned out that after Gamabunta came back, he immediately informed Fukasaku and Shima about his meeting with Hawking. Although the two senior officials of MT Myoboku felt unbelievable, they also reverse-channeled Jiraiya and checked the contract scroll. To their surprise, Hawking's name was actually on the scroll. It's just that the name didn't always exist. After about an hour, it magically disappeared. So they immediately asked Gamaji to reverse-channel Naruto. The lustful immortal is here too. When Naruto heard about his master, he immediately went to the temple with Gamaji. When he arrived at the temple gate, he also saw Jiraiya. Naruto, did the 9 tails in your body show any abnormalities just now? Jiraiya asked about Kyuubi when they met, and Naruto replied honestly. Luxury immortal, how do you know? 9 tails just disappeared from my body for an hour, but now it has appeared again. Such a thing actually happens. Jiraiya was also stunned when he heard this. Is there really another world? I think it's better to ask the Great Toad Immortal about this matter. The Great Toad Immortal has probably fallen asleep again. You guys wait here for a while, and we'll wake him up. Fukasaku and Shima entered the temple of the Great Toad Sage first. Half an hour later, the Great Toad Immortal, who was awakened and heard the whole story clearly, slowly spoke. There are indeed many other worlds outside this world. I don't know why this happened, and I haven't seen any new prophecies. But since he has signed a contract, even if it is only for 1 hour a day, as long as he is not hostile to us, we, the Toad Clan, are willing to abide by the contents of the contract. Quote. This is really not something ordinary people can endure. In the early morning, Hawking returned to his room in the mutant school. After taking a shower and preparing to sleep, he unlocked the multiple shadow clones he had cast during the day. In an instant, the training memories of more than a dozen shadow clones flooded into his brain at the same time, making him almost wince in pain. Physical fatigue was nothing to him with Saiyan blood, but the mental impact made him very uncomfortable. After he calmed down, he couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Naruto was indeed different from ordinary people, so he used more than a dozen shadow clones to assist in training, while Naruto always used hundreds at a time. It takes such a strong will and big nerves to withstand the impact of hundreds of shadow clones. But if you think about it carefully, it's not surprising. After all, Naruto's experience since childhood and his determination to work hard to become stronger and protect his companions are indeed incomparable to him as a person born in modern society. He had an unfortunate childhood, but that was compared to a normal family, and compared to Naruto's, it was far behind. Just like he can't have Wukong's piety and persistence in martial arts. Sleep. Taking advantage of the fatigue caused by the shadow clone, Hawking fell down and fell asleep. He slept until the afternoon of the next day when he woke up. After going to the cafeteria to have a full meal, he used Wukong Jutsu to go to the remote woods yesterday and loaded the Naruto template. Ninjutsu. Psychic technique. He bit his fingers and quickly formed a seal and pressed it to the ground, and Gamabunta's huge body appeared under him again. Hey, Boss Toad meets again. Flying in front of Gamabunta, Hawking greeted him warmly. And Gamabunta didn't talk nonsense and blew out a smoke ring. Kid, your name is Huo Jin, right? Yesterday I told our elders of Miaomu Mountain about your situation. They want to see you today. I wonder if you would like to go to Miaomu Mountain with me. Of course, I also want to find out what's going on. Hawking thought for a moment after hearing this, and then nodded. Since the time is synchronized, it is very likely that Mount Myoboku is Mount Myoboku in the Naruto world, rather than Mount Myoboku created out of thin air by the template of the protagonist. Otherwise, after his protagonist template is loaded, Myobokuyama should also disappear. But it's hard to say. Anyway, if you want to learn immortality and verify some of your conjectures, you will have to go to Miaomu Mountain sooner or later. Okay, kid, please wait a moment. Seeing Hawking's agreement, Gamabunta immediately cancelled the psychic spell and returned to MT Myoboku, and then performed the reverse channeling technique at MT Myoboku, but Hawking raised his hand to stop him. Wait a minute, because it's a different world, and I'm afraid something will go wrong, so I asked Boss Toad to channel my shadow clone through reverse channeling. Hawking formed a seal with his hands, created a shadow clone, and handed his magic ring to the shadow clone. Using reverse channeling to go to Miaomu Mountain in the Naruto world is a risky move, but it is not because he is afraid of safety issues. With his current strength, he is still confident in self-protection. What he was worried about was the issue of channeling from different worlds. You must know that although Miaomu Mountain is one of the 3 great immortal lands, it is in the world of Naruto, only 5 days away from Konoha village, but you cannot enter without the permission of the Toads. So even if you are reverse channeled, you can still leave and return to Konoha on foot. He has been reverse channeled. If no one here uses channeling to channel him back, then there will be no way to travel back to the Marvel world from Mount Miaomu. It would be okay if he was automatically sent back when the time came, but if he was afraid that when the time came, he would directly remove the Naruto template at Myoboku Mountain and be left in the Naruto world forever, that would be too much. So he planned to use the shadow clone to experiment first, and after he figured out the rules, he would go to the original body. No problem. Gamabunta nodded, then lifted the psychic spell and returned to MT Myoboku. After a moment, Hawking's shadow clone turned into smoke with a bang and disappeared into the woods. As this MT Myoboku, the scene in front of him changed, and the surrounding area was no longer an ordinary forest, but a strange and otherworldly frog garden. This is a place surrounded by mountains, surrounded by many strange-shaped plants like mushrooms 4 to 5 meters high, as well as various frogs. The small ones are no bigger than a hand, and the large ones are as tall as several floors. Some of them are practicing ninjutsu, some of them are practicing close combat, and some of them are playing and playing. They look very lively. And where he is now is in the middle of this worldly frog garden, with a huge temple in front of him. Kid, welcome to the Kingdom of Frogs, Mount Miaomu. The 2 elders are already waiting for you at the temple. Go there by yourself. Quote. Gamabunta pointed to the temple in front with his pipe, and disappeared from Hawking's sight with a leap. Just 1 hour, hurry up. Looking at the temple in front of him, the shadow clone Huo Jin used Wukong technique and flew directly over. His shadow clone equally shares not only chakra, but also ki and magic power, so not only ninjutsu, but also magic and ki moves can be used. But it definitely doesn't have the physical strength of a Saiyan, and the weakness of the shadow clone disappearing when attacked is still there. That's Naruto and Jiraiya. When he came to the sky above the temple and saw the yellow and white hair standing below, he immediately guessed that they must be Naruto and Jiraiya, and there was a look of surprise on his face. Naruto and Jiraiya are here, which means that the two people must have been channeled by the toad, which means that Mount Myoboku is really Mount Myoboku in the Naruto world. So if he can wander around in the ninja world. Although the time is only 1 hour, sometimes 1 hour is enough for him to do something. Hello everyone. Hawking fell from the sky and waved a warm greeting. It really seems like it. Looking at Hawking falling from the sky, Jiraiya, Fukasaku and Shima looked at Naruto at the same time, and Naruto himself was also stunned. The same yellow hair, the same fox whiskers, the same clothes and forehead protector, and the same demeanor. Except for their different faces, there is basically no difference between Hawking and Naruto at this time. Oh, Hawking is taller than Naruto. Your name is Hawking, right? I have prepared some food. Why don't you all go home first and we can chat while eating? After coming back to his senses, Shijian immediately extended an invitation enthusiastically. No, we just ate before we came here. Hawking, Naruto, and Jiraiya refused at the same time. What Shima called delicacies were the various bugs that their frogs liked to eat the most. Hawking knew this, Jiraiya knew it, and Naruto, who had already had a meal yesterday, also knew it. Therefore, the reaction of the three people at this time was naturally the same as when they first retreated. I think we just sit here and talk, I only have an hour. Hawking reached out and pointed to a few stones on the ground, and used the transformation technique to turn the stones into several chairs. Wow, you can actually transform into a chair just like Captain Yamato's would release. Naruto immediately looked curious when he saw this. But Jiraiya, Fukasaku, and Shima showed doubts. They didn't feel the fluctuation of chakra just now, and it wasn't wood release. I am Uzumaki Naruto. I'm Jiraiya, Fukasaku. Shima. After sitting down, the two of them briefly introduced themselves. Hawking smiled. Actually, you don't need to introduce me. I already know that Boss Toad must have told you that I have Naruto's memories within this hour, at least the memories before yesterday. Tai Wen did tell us, but what he said was unclear. Can you explain it again in detail? Fukasaku, an old frog wearing a cloak and a white beard, asked Hawking. Hawking had already thought of the answer to Fukasaku's question. You can understand that there are other planets besides the planet you live on, and there are also human beings living there, and I am one of them. One day, due to special reasons, I had some kind of special entanglement with Naruto in your world, and this strange situation happened. But you can rest assured that I am not hostile. This state only occurs once a day and can last for up to an hour at a time. As for what the reason is, I don't know. You may have to ask the gods. Quote. Hawking, is Nine Tails in your body now? Jiraiya asked. Just now, Naruto told him that the Nine Tails in his body disappeared again. Luxury. Jiraiya Sage, the Nine Tails are in my body. Within this hour, the Nine Tails will be transferred to my body and sealed. When the hour is over, the Nine Tails will return to Naruto's body. Hawking nodded and did not hide anything. What he needs most now is to win the trust of the toads here, because only in this way can he come here. His psychic technique can only summon toads to come to him. If he wants to come to Miamu Mountain and the world of Naruto, the toads here need to use reverse psychic techniques to summon him. If the toad here misunderstands that he is unwilling to use reverse spirituality in the future, then he will not be able to come here. After hearing Hawking's words, Jiraiya, Fukasaku and Shima also fell into deep thought. Although what Hawking said was unbelievable to them, they had to believe it because there was really no way to explain the current situation. Especially after they met Hawking in person. Naruto, who was quite nervous, came over with a curious expression on his face. What's the world like where you live? Do you believe what I said? Hawking looked at Naruto in surprise. Naruto touched his chin and replied. I don't know why, but the first time I saw you, I felt that you were a good person, so I believe what you said is true. Actually, I am too. Seeing you is like seeing my own brother. Hawking couldn't help but sigh. In the state of Naruto's template, his spirit is also affected by Naruto, and he naturally has a natural affection for Naruto, including Jiraiya and the Toad here. It's just that his own personality is suppressing the effects of Naruto's template, allowing him to maintain his current more rational state. Most of our people are ordinary people. Only a few people have special abilities, but they are not the same as the ninjutsu you have here. While Hawking and Naruto were chatting, Jiraiya and the two frogs over there also made a decision. Fukasaku stood on the chair and solemnly said to Hawking, "In this case, then Hawking, you are our Toad Clan's contractor. If you need our help in fighting in the future, we will also help you fight." "My pleasure." A smile appeared on Hawking's face after hearing this. He knew that he had only gained initial trust now, and whether he could fully gain the trust of the Toad Clan would depend on his future performance. An hour later, the loading of Naruto's protagonist template ended. Time is up. Hawking's figure disappeared in Miaomu Mountain in an instant. Seeing Hawking disappear, Naruto looked at Jiraiya and said, "Kyuubi is back." At this time, the Nine Tails in Naruto's mental space and the entire Fox were depressed. What the hell is this situation? Why can the Jinchuriki keep switching back and forth like this? Yesterday he returned to Naruto's mental space, today he came to Hawking's mental space, and then returned to Naruto's mental space. Anyway, the Jinchuriki is always changing, but what remains unchanged is that it is still sealed. On the other side, in the suburbs of New York in the Marvel world, Hawking's body, which had been waiting, saw the shadow clone Hawking appearing in the place where he disappeared, with a smile on his face. It seems to be in good condition. He did not use the psychic technique, and the shadow clone was automatically sent back after the time was up, which meant that he no longer had to worry about not being channeled back in time and would be left in the world of Naruto forever. In fact, he wouldn't mind if the world of Naruto appeared at the beginning. After all, Naruto's combat power is at the level of Otsutsuki, which is many levels safer than Marvel. But now that he has lived in the Marvel world for several years, he has become bound to the people and things here. Naturally, he is unwilling to stay in the Naruto world forever. Untie. After untying the shadow clone, all the memories and experiences of the shadow clone for an hour poured into his mind. Then take an hour every day to go to Miaomu Mountain. Now that I have initially gained trust, I naturally have to go frequently and meet every day to become familiar with each other. Only then will I have the opportunity to learn more ninjutsu. Especially the sealing technique. If you learn the sealing technique well, you may have the opportunity to seal Voldemort's soul and extract the magical knowledge you want. A week later, at the gate of the mutant school. Hawking, Wanda, Pietro, here. Hawking carried his suitcase, Wanda and Pietro, and before he reached the door, he saw Elena and Oleg waving to them. Christmas vacation is here, and the mutant school also has a 2-week vacation, so that students who still have families can go home for the holiday. So Elena and Oleg drove over early. "Dad, Mom." When Wanda saw her parents, she immediately shouted happily and ran over, regardless of the snowflakes falling on her body. "What a kid." Pietro curled his lips when he saw this. Hawking smiled. "Let's go. My whole body will be covered with snow in a while." Pietro's figure flashed, causing snow to fall all over the sky. He rushed to his parents' side first, causing Wanda to scream. Hawking shook his head, picked up the box left by Wanda and Pietro, and walked over steadily. Putting their luggage into the trunk of the car, the 5 of them got into the car amidst laughter and laughter. Oleg drove, Elena sat in the passenger seat, Pietro was squeezed to the left side of the back seat by Wanda, and then Wanda happily sat in the middle holding Hawking's arm. Along the way, Wanda chattered to Oleg and Elena, talking about her life in school, and from time to time she and Pietro would quarrel and undermine each other. Oleg and Elena were caring and giving their own opinions, and were made to laugh by the 2 brothers and sisters from time to time. Hawking occasionally interjected a few words, and the smile on his face never disappeared. He enjoys this feeling in his current life very much, and does not want this life to be destroyed, so he has to work harder to improve his strength to protect this hard-won happiness. The car sped along and drove for more than an hour before arriving at the northernmost residential area of the North Bronx. Because it is on the edge of the city, the housing prices here are not expensive. They live in a small independent house along the street, which is very similar to Peter's Uncle Ben's house. It's just that Peter's Uncle Ben's family lived on the edge of Queens, and they lived in the Bronx. Hawking has no plans to change his residence. Compared with the central areas of the city, at least this kind of suburb will generally not be affected after a major incident occurs, and is much safer. Hey, why is this guy here? Just as the car drove to the door of his house, Hawking suddenly frowned because he saw two familiar figures standing at the door of his house. Magneto and Mystique are waiting here for me. What's their purpose? Normally, Magneto would go directly to the mutant school if he wanted to find him. At this time, he was waiting for him here, obviously to avoid Professor X and talk to him alone. Good afternoon, Mr. Eric, are you here? After parking the car, Hawking opened the car door with a smile on his face. No matter what Magneto's purpose is, as long as it is not directed at him, he will naturally not show off his face to offend others. Hawking, I have something very important to discuss with you. Magneto took off his hat and dusted the snow off his body and said with a smile. Hawking raised his eyebrows, then turned around and showed a warm smile to Oleg and Alinda, who had just gotten off the car. This old gentleman and lady are my friends. I have something to do with them and will go out for a while. I will be back soon. Okay, you are you. Alina was about to agree, but when he saw Magneto's appearance, his expression changed and he was shocked on the spot. Magneto looked at Elena with confusion on his face. Ma'am, do I know you? No, I don't know him. I recognized the wrong person. Hawking, come back soon. Elena waved her hand in a hurry, gave instructions to Hawking, and then pulled Wanda and Pietro straight into the house. Oleg, on the other hand, glanced at Magneto with complicated eyes and followed him carrying the box. Something's wrong. Hawking showed a trace of suspicion on his face, but he did not ask further questions. Instead, he turned to Magneto and Mystique and said, there is a cafe out front, let's go there and chat. Mr. Eric, you came to see me specifically at this time. It should be more than just chatting. I wonder what the very important thing you just said is about. Drinking coffee and listening to Magneto's constant chatter, which was still the same old mutant thought output, Hawking stopped wasting time and clicked on the topic directly. Generally, when two people are talking, whoever loses his temper first will be at a disadvantage and lose the initiative. But Hawking doesn't think so. He believes that as long as he is strong enough, he will never lose the initiative. Now he can suppress Magneto even if the giant ape does not load any protagonist template. Naturally, he does not need to waste time trying to be patient with Magneto. What he wants now is to finish the conversation and go home to reunite with his family as soon as possible. Seeing that Hawking couldn't bear it anymore, Magneto also accepted it as soon as he could. Instead of showing off, he said with a serious expression, Hawking, S.H.I.E.L.D. is getting ready to deal with us mutants. What, are you kidding? Hawking's brows suddenly raised. As for Nick Fury's current men, except for Captain Marvel, few can fight. Carter, Hawkeye and Black Widow can only compete with ordinary X-Men. Facing him, Magneto and Professor X, Captain Marvel alone couldn't stand it. This is why Nick Fury was willing to accept three-way negotiations in the first place. And at this point in time, Avengers such as Thor, Hulk, Iron Man Tony and Doctor Strange Stephen have not yet appeared, nor have they been attracted by S.H.I.E.L.D., shouldn't they? Could it be that Magneto himself wants to cause trouble? In the current situation, Nick Fury would not cause trouble if he had any brains. He felt that the person who wanted to cause trouble was more likely to be the Magneto in front of him. Magneto, the old fox, had obviously expected Hawking's suspicion. He gestured to Mystique next to him. Mystique nodded, took out some information from the bag in his hand and put it on the table. Superior. This is some information I sneaked into S.H.I.E.L.D. and got from inside them. She is worthy of being the first female spy of mutants. She can even infiltrate S.H.I.E.L.D. Hawking picked up the pile of information and browsed it quickly. The more he looked at him, the more solemn his expression became. I didn't expect that the mutant kid who could negate superpowers was actually taken over by S.H.I.E.L.D. In X-Men 3, there is a mutant child codenamed Antidote. All superpowers who are close to him will lose their abilities and will only recover after leaving a certain distance. Later, a company called Worthington, by studying the mutant child's abilities, developed a potion that could turn mutants into ordinary people, and also made corresponding weapons. Magneto was afraid that humans would use this potion to eliminate all mutants, so he entangled a large number of mutants in an attempt to destroy the potion. However, in fact, this potion cannot always turn mutants into ordinary people, it just temporarily suppresses their abilities. He had actually sent people to look for this company before, but he found that the Worthington Company in this universe was just an ordinary biological company, and he did not find the medicine related to the mutant child's research. He thought it was because the universe was different, so there was no plot here. After working on it for a long time, S.H.I.E.L.D. had already intercepted it, and not only had they developed corresponding weapons, but they had also developed collars and handcuffs that could suppress mutants' abilities. This reminded him of the handcuffs that could inhibit his magical abilities that Doctor Strange was caught wearing in the movie Doctor Strange 2. Maybe they were improved based on this. Mr. Eric, why didn't you tell the professor about such an important matter first, instead of running over to me? Hawking closed the document and asked expressionlessly. In fact, he was not surprised by S.H.I.E.L.D.'s operations. Nick Fury is such a piss-poor and always wants to control all dangers in his own hands. However, he was not strong enough and could not control the situation, which instead caused greater trouble. It was not until the Hydra incident that he reflected and restrained himself. Just like he always wanted to study something like the cosmic Rubik's Cube, which was far beyond his ability, and wanted to use the energy in it to create powerful weapons, but as a result, he attracted an invasion from alien armies. But Hawking is not afraid. He is not a mutant. Those weapons may sneak up on Magneto and Professor X and temporarily turn them into ordinary people. But hitting him was of no use at all. Even if he drags the mutant child to his side, it probably won't be of much use. According to his opinion, the mutant child's ability should not only be able to suppress the superpowers of mutants, but should also be able to suppress all energy within a few meters around him. Because not only the mutants, but also the red tank whose power comes from the dimensional demon Cytoric will lose his ability after getting close to the mutant child. But his power system does not belong to this world in the first place, and it does not matter whether it will be restrained in the same way. If he really could be restrained, given his physical quality, it would be beyond the limits of a normal person, and he could solve the problem from the source in minutes. And with his strength, the mutant child couldn't get close to him if he didn't want to. That is why mutants like Magneto, who have no abilities and are similar to ordinary old people, are so afraid. Your professor should know very well that he is too indecisive. After he finds out, he will definitely not agree to launch an attack on S.H.I.E.L.D. with me first. Instead, he will go to Nick Fury to ask about the situation. By the time Nick Fury notices this, we will have lost the opportunity. So I want to cooperate with you, and then we can work together to destroy S.H.I.E.L.D. first, and then tell Charles the whole story. I believe he won't blame you then. Quote. Magneto looked at Hawking steadily, his eyes full of expectation. Based on his understanding of Hawking in the past few years, this kid is far more decisive and ruthless than he appears on the surface. If something like this endangers the entire mutant race, endangers the safety of himself and his family, there is a high probability that he will be on his side. Just like killing Stryker at that time, it was not the first time Hawking had done this kind of thing. Let me consider it. Hawking tapped his fingers on the table and did not reply immediately. If he is really a mutant, then it is really possible for him to do this with Magneto. Unfortunately, he was not, and he always felt that things were not that simple, because even if there were potions and weapons that could temporarily suppress mutants' abilities, he felt that with Nick Fury's mind, he would not launch an attack easily. Because if it is not easy to develop into a war between humans and mutants, even if they win, there will definitely be heavy casualties in the end. This is not the outcome Nick Fury wanted. Yes, but I hope you will think it over as soon as possible. According to our intelligence, S.H.I.E.L.D. is likely to launch an attack on us after Christmas. It will be too late to make a decision by then. Hearing Hawking's answer, Magneto paused and did not press too hard. He knew that Hawking was not easily influenced and was very opinionated. If he was pushed too hard, he would easily arouse suspicion. There's only a week until Christmas, and I'll have your answer in 3 days. Hawking thought for a moment and replied. It was impossible for him to listen to Magneto's words. 3 days was enough for him to go to S.H.I.E.L.D. to find out the truth of the matter. If it is true as Magneto said, then although he will not destroy S.H.I.E.L.D., he will definitely teach them a profound lesson and make them be honest for a period of time. If not, then it must be Magneto who wants to cause trouble and needs to be suppressed. Anyway, whether it is S.H.I.E.L.D. or Magneto, he cannot be destroyed easily. It is best to maintain the current situation so that he can have time to continue to develop. Okay, I'll come back to you in 3 days. Magneto nodded and left the coffee shop with Mystique. If Hawking was willing to cooperate, it would be best. If not, he had options. They are all careless people. Why don't you live a good life? You have to cause trouble. After Magneto left, Hawking shook his head and returned home. S.H.I.E.L.D. has developed drugs and weapons for mutants, which means that Hydra also has these. If Hydra, which has complex components, is mastered, many forces may follow suit. In the future, the situation of mutants will become even more difficult, and more mutants will be captured and studied by ambitious forces because of these targeted weapons. Back home, Oleg and Elena did not ask Hawking about Magneto, but continued to talk and laugh as usual. However, he was keen and discovered something strange. At night, after everyone watched TV in the living room and returned to their rooms, Hawking floated cross-legged on the bed, turned on his 5 senses to the maximum, and began to eavesdrop on the movements in other rooms. In the scene during the day, it was obvious that Elena and Magneto had something to do with each other, but since Elena was unwilling to say it, it was not easy for him as a son to ask. But for him, this is a more important matter that must be clarified. Because it will involve his attitude towards Magneto later. If there was no connection and there was a conflict in the future, he wouldn't mind killing Magneto casually. But if it was related, then he would have to pay attention. The first thing that reached his ears was the sound from Pietro's room, because it was closest to his. My forehead and oars have been reduced to ashes. Brother, although you are still in adolescence, you must exercise some restraint. After twitching his mouth, he focused on the next room, which was Wanda's room. The next movement is a cat-lying position. Open your knees as wide as your hips. Inhale, slowly raise your hips and bend your waist downward slightly to form an arc. It turns out that she is practicing yoga, and Wanda has reached the age where she loves beauty. Passing through Wanda's room again, he finally heard the voices of Elena and Ogle. Elena, don't think too much. It was just an accident. I just asked Pietro. It turns out that he is also a mutant, so he met Hawking. He did not come to take away the 2 children. Oleg, I just feel sorry for you. How can I be sorry? You told me everything back then and you didn't hide anything from me. And I have never regretted it. That year, I was robbed in an alley, and he suddenly appeared and saved me. After one night, he disappeared without a trace, but I was pregnant. My parents advised me to abort them, but I couldn't bear it. Then I met you. You didn't mind my pregnancy and even proposed to me. From then on, I realized that love should not be about falling in love at first sight, but about getting along day and night, understanding each other and giving to each other. Quote. Actually, I never told you that I had a crush on you a long time ago. It's just that you were too dazzling at that time. There were countless outstanding boys who liked you, but I was ordinary and insignificant. It wasn't until later that what happened to you did I have the opportunity to appear in front of you, so I have nothing to apologize for. This was my choice. Quote. Oleg, let's have another baby. Back in Sokovia, because of the war and because you had to take care of Wanda and Pietro, you were unwilling to have another child. Now that we have settled down, let's have another child, a child for both of us. Hiss. Hearing this, Hawking quickly put away his ears. It would be inappropriate for children to listen to it anymore. I didn't expect that Magneto is Wanda and Pietro's real father. After seeing Elena's strange behavior during the day, he actually had some suspicions in his heart, but he didn't expect that it was actually the result of Magneto's one-night affair. No wonder Magneto couldn't recognize Elena. I'm afraid that in Magneto's life, he should have had many women like Elena. But the age of the 2 of them is understandable. It is normal for a girl in her 20s to fall in love with a mature, steady and charismatic uncle in his 40s, who is also a hero who saves beautiful women. Don't look at Magneto and Professor. Even Oleg is a little pitiful, but it's hard to say whether it's a fight or a fight. If Elena hadn't been pregnant, Oleg probably wouldn't have had a chance. In fact, he originally thought that if Wanda had a problem with her life experience, she should be the daughter of the gypsy Natalia, but he didn't expect that in this universe, she was actually the daughter of Magneto. In this case, is Wanda a mutant? Forget it, it doesn't matter if it's true or not. Even if Wanda isn't, Pietro definitely is. It's just that he decided to keep it in his heart first. As for Magneto, as long as he doesn't do anything too extreme in the future, considering that he is the biological father of Wanda and Pietro, he will try to be as gentle as possible and beat him half to death. Early the next morning, after having breakfast with his family, Hawking quietly made the seal. Shadow clone technique. A shadow clone with half of his energy appeared next to him. Go to SHIELD headquarters and check. The shadow clone used Wukong Jutsu and flew out of the window, flying straight in the direction of Washington. This kind of intelligence checking can be left to the shadow clone. Today he will accompany his family to purchase various Christmas items to decorate their rooms and yards. Preparing food to cook for Christmas and more. Hawking, we're going. As soon as the shadow clone left, Wanda's dong 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 knocking sound came from outside the door. Let's go, you impatient little brat. After using the transformation spell to change into clothes, Hawking opened the door and pinched Wanda's round little face, while Wanda hugged Hawking's arm, pulled him and ran out the door. They're not ready yet, let's go outside and build a snowman first. Pietro, who had just put on a scarf over there, saw this and couldn't help but complain. I'm a brother too, why don't I get this treatment? If he dared to pinch Wanda's face, Wanda would knock out all his teeth. The title of the eldest sister of the mutant school was no joke. Who told you to always snatch my sister's snacks before? Elena heard Pietro's complaints from the side and came over to straighten her clothes and smiled. Pietro shrugged. Forget it, if she really did that to me, I would get goosebumps. You don't know how savage she is at school. I really sympathize with her future boyfriend. You brat, has anyone said that about my sister? Oleg, who had just come downstairs, heard this and stepped forward to give Pietro a blow on the back of his head. Pietro rubbed the back of his head. I'm just telling the truth, and I will get beaten even if I tell the truth. I think she might as well marry Hawking in the future. Only Hawking can control her. After saying that, Oleg raised his hand again and immediately ran out with a swipe. His ability is an active skill, which means it is only useful when it is actively activated. If not activated, he is no different from an ordinary person. So he didn't dodge when Oleg hit him at first, because he didn't notice it at the time, and naturally he didn't have the ability to take the initiative. Now that he had seen that Oleg was going to hit him again, he immediately activated his abilities, and it was impossible for Oleg to hit him. What this kid said makes sense. Seeing this, Elena on the side shook her head helplessly, and then couldn't help but nodded. If Hawking and Wanda are together in the future, it will of course be a great thing. Wanda is a mutant. If she marries an ordinary person in the future, she will inevitably have grudges. Even if the other person does not have grudges, it is impossible that the other person's parents and family will not all have grudges. Hawking is different. He is a mutant and a family member. He is only 2 years older than Wanda. He is mature, stable, and able to take care of others. The key is that Wanda also sticks to him. If he really could become Wanda's husband in the future, she would die laughing. However, I am afraid that my daughter will not be so lucky. I heard Pietro said that if the school likes Hawking's little girl, then it doesn't cost too much. No matter what you think about, you are still a child. Seeing his wife in a trance, Oleg, who knew her very well, had no choice but to shake her awake. Wanda 14 and Hawking 16 are not yet adults yet, so their wives have a lot to think about. You are still a child now, but you will grow up in the blink of an eye. Of course, you must plan in advance, otherwise it will be too late when you grow up. Looks like I have to help our little Wanda out. Quote. Elena replied thoughtfully. The corner of Oleg's mouth twitched, and he stopped persuading and pulled his wife out. Outside the door, Wanda and Hawking, who had absolutely no talent for building snowmen at this time, had worked together to build a huge, ugly little snowman, which made Pietro hold his stomach and laugh. But soon he was hit by a snowball from Wanda, and snowballs flew all over the yard for an instant, and they didn't stop until Oleg and Elena came out. The family drove to the lively city, playing music and laughing, to start their pre-Christmas shopping. Decorating the house with lights, balloons, stickers, mini Christmas trees, and various ingredients, I went shopping from morning until 1 p.m. before I could buy everything. So we chose a restaurant in the city for lunch. Wanda, you are too clingy to Hawking. What will you do if Hawking is gone one day? Looking at Wanda, who had to sit next to Hawking when eating, Pietro couldn't help but joke. And Wanda snorted. Then I will create a world with Hawking. Puff. Hawking, who had just taken a sip of water, almost couldn't help but spit it out when he heard these words. Are you going to evolve into Uchiha Wanda? Wanda, even if your brother is gone in the future, you must live a happy life. There are many beautiful things in the world waiting for you to experience. Don't go to extremes in your thoughts. No one has died since ancient times, and he is not sure that he will be immortal in the future, nor is he sure that he will be able to survive major events. If he really died, he didn't want the people he loved to go to extremes because of his death. Especially Wanda, although the more extreme her thoughts are, the more powerful she is, it also means that she is easier to be controlled by Sithorn and will eventually become a puppet. After all, he is actually still in the category of a normal person. Sometimes he is a little cruel in his actions, but he also has his own bottom line. He is not like Magneto, who can exterminate the entire human race for the sake of mutants, nor is he as restrained as Professor X, nor is he as extreme as Wanda. If possible, he hoped that the world would always maintain peace, and that he and Wanda's family would live a plain and happy life without having to worry about money. I'm just kidding, Hawking, you are so awesome, you will definitely stay with us forever. Wanda blinked and smiled. Yes, I will become more and more powerful, so powerful that no one can take me away from you. Hawking also had a smile on his face. As long as he is strong enough, no one can destroy everything now. After lunch, the family returned home with a full load. Hawking took Wanda and Pietro to decorate the entire house, while Oleg and Elena packed up the various ingredients they bought. When it was almost time to eat dinner, Hawking suddenly felt a tremor in his body and some more memories appeared in his mind. It was the shadow clone that sneaked into the shield building to complete the mission, lifted the ninjutsu, and sent the information back. There is indeed something wrong with this old guy Magneto. In one day, the shadow clone had roughly figured out the matter through various magic and ninjutsu such as transformation, lockpicking and soul-stealing spells. Indeed, as Magneto said, S.H.I.E.L.D. has developed potions and weapons against mutants. But there are no plans to attack the mutants after Christmas, at least not any time soon. Are you just trying to take the opportunity to trick me into killing S.H.I.E.L.D. and drag me into trouble, or do you have other intentions? After thinking for a moment, he formed another seal and sent a shadow clone, letting it fly to the mutant school. In this situation, he thought it would be better to tell Professor. An hour later, the mutant school principal's office. Professor X looked at Hawking with a surprised look on his face. Hawking, you went home for the holidays, why did you suddenly come back? Professor, I have something important to tell you. Hawking said seriously. After hearing this, Professor. You say, Magneto came to me last night. He asked me to cooperate with him to destroy S.H.I.E.L.D. because he found out. Hawking told Professor. He didn't plan to tell anyone about the shadow clone ninjutsu unless necessary. Because as long as no one knows this ninjutsu, he can use the shadow clone to assume various identities and do things that are inconvenient for him in his current identity. For example, if one day he wants to kill the president, Hawking, the chairman of League of Legends, superhero Hawking, and X-Men Hawking will not be able to do it, but his shadow clone can change his appearance at will and do it. Even if he is exposed, his death will turn into a puff of smoke, making it impossible to trace him. After listening to Hawking's account, Professor X couldn't help but sigh. My old friend is really restless, but Hawking, you don't need to worry about S.H.I.E.L.D.'s potions and weapons. Professor. Hawking found that Professor X smiled and explained. Actually, Nick Fury talked to me a few days ago and told me about their development of potions and weapons. He has no hostility towards us and promised that as long as we don't take the initiative to cause trouble, he will never use them. Those ones. He mainly did it to prevent Eric, because Eric's movements had become more and more frequent in the past few years, which made him feel very uneasy. Of course, I know that I can't trust everything he says, but some of his words can still be trusted. Quote, He knew what kind of person Nick Fury was, and what Nick Fury said was just a hope that if Magneto launched a war, he and Hawking would side with S.H.I.E.L.D., or at least remain neutral. In fact, if Nick Fury really had enough power, he probably wouldn't mind doing what Eric said. He knew all of this. But so what, he just hopes to continue to maintain this situation. As long as Hawking's League of Legends plan is completed, the public will become more and more recognized for mutants. In the future, even Nick Fury will not be able to deal with them openly. Nick Fury, this old fox, seems to have made a good plan. After hearing Professor X's explanation, Hawking also raised his eyebrows. He naturally thought of what Professor X thought of. To be able to become the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. and to develop S.H.I.E.L.D. into the world's largest organization, Nick Fury not only has arrogance and desire for control, but also has extraordinary abilities and calculations. Yeah, so as long as we stay still, it won't be so easy for the two of them to fight. I have warned Nick Fury that if he takes the initiative to attack the Brotherhood of Mutants, then we will fall to the Brotherhood of Mutants. You should also reply to Eric tomorrow. If he takes the initiative to attack S.H.I.E.L.D., then we will fall to S.H.I.E.L.D. Quote. Professor X said to Hawking. Okay, I understand. Hawking nodded. This is indeed good, at least it can continue to be stable for a while. The next day, it was still the same coffee shop. Hawking, have you thought about it? I don't think you want to be caught by S.H.I.E.L.D. one day, put on a leash like a dog, and then stay in the laboratory every day, becoming a guinea pig in their experiments, or being manipulated into becoming their executioner. Even if you think you are strong enough, don't forget that you have a sister and a brother, and they are not as strong as you. Join me and we'll destroy S.H.I.E.L.D., and when the time comes, it's a done deal and Charles won't say anything more about you. Quote. When they met again, Magneto stopped procrastinating and started to bewitch him. But Hawking just drank coffee calmly and replied unhurriedly. A week ago, Nick Fury had gone to the professor alone and told him about the potions and weapons. They had no intention of starting a war with mutants. So, I'm sorry, Mr. Eric, I can't agree to your request. Also, the professor asked me to tell you that if you take the initiative to start a war, then he will have to side with S.H.I.E.L.D. Quote. He actually took the initiative to find Charles, so, very good. Hearing Hawking's answer, Magneto was stunned for a moment, and then an ugly smile appeared on his face. At this time Hawking added, however, that is just the professor's point of view. I think, Mr. Eric, if you have any powerful trump card, at least let me think it is enough to deal with S.H.I.E.L.D. and the professor's X-Men. Then it's not impossible for me to consider cooperating with you to completely make S.H.I.E.L.D. disappear from this world. I don't like to take risks, nor do I like to fight uncertain battles. Quote. He didn't want Magneto to think that he was completely on the professor's side, so that if Magneto had any conspiracy, he might get the news in advance and not be caught off guard. Magneto looked at Hawking, was silent for about 5 seconds, and finally smiled. I know, if that day comes, I will be the first to come to you for cooperation. After saying that, he took Mystique and left the cafe. Looking at Magneto and Mystique leaving, Hawking murmured. I always feel like this old guy is up to something. His intuition told him that Magneto would not just let it go. But after thinking about it carefully, it actually doesn't matter. He doesn't want the current peace to be broken, but if it is really broken, then he will take the opportunity to knock on the mountain in Junhu, show off his strength, and let all the forces know that he, Hawking, is not someone to be trifled with. At the same time, we can take the opportunity to take Little Spider and the others to once again launch the banner of League of Legends International Company. If you're lucky and the incident spreads over a large area, you may be able to collect a wave of justice points, which is not a loss after all. So after thinking about it, he didn't intend to delve into it further. On the other side, Mystique drove her car and asked Magneto next to her. Why didn't you just reveal some of our plans to him? Maybe we could really win him over to our side. Don't be fooled by this little fox. What he just said may not be true, or he may just want to get information. We can't risk telling him the plan. Since he is unwilling to join us, don't blame me for being ruthless then. Quote. The murderous look flashed in Magneto's eyes. Ever since Hawking poisoned Stryker, he had admired Hawking and felt that Hawking might be the third true leader of mutants besides him and Charles. Especially Hawking is still so young, unlike him and Charles who are already old and have plenty of time. But this time, Hawking did not agree to join him, so he had to give up Hawking and let Hawking join him. As long as his plan succeeds, mutants will completely rule the world, and naturally there will be no need for leaders like Hawking. But I still hope that you are lucky enough to survive this Christmas. But if you don't survive, please don't blame me. You sacrificed for the future of the entire mutant population, and it's worth it. Quote. What should we do next? Should we implement the second plan? Mystique asked as the car pulled up to a Brotherhood of Mutants stronghold in New York. Magneto nodded with a sneer. To start the second plan, let's let humans eat dogs first. Okay, I will go to S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters right away and leak the information that Nick Fury has discovered Hydra to Minister Pierce. The same sneer appeared on Mystique's face. During the time when she transformed and infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D., she not only found out that S.H.I.E.L.D. was developing medicines and weapons for mutants, she also found out a very interesting piece of information. That is, Hydra, which was wiped out during World War II, still exists, and has become the real behind-the-scenes controller of S.H.I.E.L.D. And Nick Fury seems to be aware of this and is investigating secretly. Now, as long as the information that Nick Fury is already investigating Hydra is leaked to Hydra leader Pierce, then Nick Fury will no longer have the time to target them, and whether he can survive the battle with Hydra is a question. Even if he survived, his vitality would definitely be severely damaged, and so would Hydra. Without the obstruction of S.H.I.E.L.D. and the powerful Captain Marvel, his plan can be implemented smoothly. When Magneto's plan succeeds, all mutants will surrender to Magneto. No matter who wins in the end, S.H.I.E.L.D. or Hydra, they will no longer be the mutants' opponents. By then, no one in the entire world can stop Magneto, and their ideals will surely be realized. Go ahead, I'm going to Cairo. Apocalypse needs me to comfort him personally. I can't let him be exposed now. Magneto put on his helmet, and his body was enveloped by the powerful magnetic force. He lifted into the air and flew quickly towards Cairo, Egypt. The speed was so fast that it actually broke through the speed of sound. If Hawking were here, he would be very surprised, because compared to the previous battle with Captain Marvel, Magneto is not a little bit stronger now. Then let me start taking action too. Seeing Magneto leave, Mystique transformed into Magneto, and then controlled the magnetism to make herself fly, but the speed she changed into Magneto was much slower. Although Apocalypse has developed his potential and can acquire other people's abilities after transformation, he is still incomparable to his original form. Early the next morning, the S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters building, the office of the Minister of the World Security Council. As soon as Alexander Pierce sat down in his seat, he saw a strange document bag placed on the table. He picked up the document bag with some confusion, opened it and took a look, his pupils suddenly shrank. Come here. Tell me who came to my office just now. A moment later, Pierce saw on the surveillance record that a guy who looked exactly like him walked into the office calmly, put down the document bag, and smiled and waved to the camera. It turns out to be her, the Mystique who can transform into anyone. As the apparent leader of Hydra, how could he not know information about mutants? It's just that his priority now is to let Nick Fury develop S.H.I.E.L.D. to complete the final Insight project, so he hasn't made any big moves against mutants. In his mind, the Insight project, developed using Dr. Zola's algorithm, is Hydra's biggest trump card. Once the aerospace aircraft carrier takes off, it can carry out air strikes anywhere on the entire Earth. However, any existence that is dangerous to Hydra in the future will be nipped in the cradle. There are also those mutants and superpowers who disobey Hydra and cannot escape the fate of being killed. They cannot use their abilities all the time. As long as they relax, they will be hit by deadly bullets from high altitude. But he didn't expect that the mutants under Magneto would actually send such important information at this time. Yes, that document bag contained evidence that Nick Fury was aware of the existence of Hydra and was secretly investigating it. Do you want us to have civil strife? Okay, then your wish will be granted. Putting down the information, Pierce picked up the phone. Have Agent Sidwell come to my office. He knew that Magneto wanted to use him to deal with Nick Fury, but that didn't matter. With Hydra's control over S.H.I.E.L.D., it would soon be able to eliminate Nick Fury and control S.H.I.E.L.D. again. At that time, whether it is to use potions and weapons to enslave mutants, or to wait for the completion of the Insight project to solve it together, it will not be a problem. Although it's a few years earlier than I expected, but since Nick Fury has discovered it, it can only be brought forward. In fact, during this period, he had always felt that Nick Fury had doubts about S.H.I.E.L.D., but he had no definite evidence and didn't want to kill him just yet. After all, if you kill a top-notch beast like Nick Fury, it will be difficult to find another one. But now that there is definite evidence, he can no longer feed tigers. It is precisely because he understands Nick Fury's abilities that he understands that he must kill him as soon as possible. 10 minutes later, Sitwell, who had read the information, asked, "What do we do now? Where is Nick Fury?" Pierce did not answer, but asked a question first. Sitwell thought for a moment. He went to New York a week ago and should be at the S.H.I.E.L.D. base in New York now. What about his Captain Marvel? Pierce asked again. Sitwell checked and replied, "I'm not on Earth. I just applied to go to the Tianjin Bureau's base in space 2 days ago." Very good, what a God-given opportunity. Wake up the Hydra captain and let him lead the team to kill Nick Fury for me tomorrow. As for the next director, let you be the one. Quote, Pierce's face was filled with murderous intent. Yes, Minister, don't worry, Nick Fury won't survive tomorrow, long live Hydra. Sitwell's face suddenly turned red with excitement. Pierce responded with a smile. Long live Hydra. First get rid of Nick Fury, then completely turn Snake and S.H.I.E.L.D. into Snake and S.H.I.E.L.D., and then find a way to get Magneto and the X-Men to fight, and finally reap the benefits. The world needs to be in chaos. Only when there is chaos and enough people die will other members of the World Security Council understand the importance of S.H.I.E.L.D. Since we no longer have the talent of Nick Fury, use Hydra's method to complete the Insight project as soon as possible. Christmas is approaching, and every household has hung lanterns on their houses and yards, decorated all kinds of festive decorations, and piled up all kinds of strange snowmen. At night, with snowflakes flying, the shiny residential area seems to have turned into a fairy tale town. At this time, Hawking was sitting on the sofa in the living room with Wanda's family, drinking the hot soup cooked by Elena, watching TV and chatting about home affairs. Ding dong. Just as the family was laughing at the sitcom on TV, the doorbell suddenly rang. "I gonna go see." Pietro activated his ability and the figure flashed, and in less than a second, he had moved from the sofa to the door and opened it. What appeared in front of him was a strange one-eyed black bald man wearing a black fur coat and an eye patch. "Who are you?" "Excuse me, I'm looking for Hawking. Is he here?" "This is a rare visitor." Hearing the sound, Hawking stood up and came to the door. When he saw that the person coming was Nick Fury, he couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. He only saw Magneto last night, and today Nick Fury came to see him. Could it be that the person who came was evil? Probably not. He didn't sense the aura of anyone else nearby. If he came looking for trouble, Nick Fury wouldn't come alone. "Hawking, is he your friend? It's so cold outside and it's still snowing. Please invite him in for some hot soup and sit down to chat with us." Realizing that the visitor might be acquainted with Hawking, Oleg and Elena quickly stood up to greet him. They didn't know that Hawking was the boss of League of Legends International, but they heard from Wanda and Pietro that Hawking often helped professors in school with matters related to mutants because of his outstanding abilities. So Magneto and Mystique came to see Hawking that day. After they knew they were mutants, they didn't ask any more questions. After hearing this, Nick Fury also raised his feet to enter the house, but Hawking stopped him with his hand. He did not want his family to have too much contact with Nick Fury. He turned to Oleg and Alina and smiled softly. "My friend doesn't like soup, he's also quite withdrawn, he doesn't like crowds of people, and he's resistant to freezing. He and I can just chat outside, and you guys can watch TV." After saying that, he winked at Nick Fury and walked out. Nick Fury shrugged and followed. "Then let's talk in my car. I heard from the professor that Director Fury is busy with everything and deals with big things every day. Why did he suddenly come to see me, a little mutant student? What's the matter?" Sitting in Nick Fury's black van, Hawking first opened his mouth to test it out. In fact, the last time he and Nick Fury met was during the war a few years ago. Regarding some international affairs of League of Legends, the professor also contacted Nick Fury. "Mr. Hawking is joking. You are not only a student of the mutant school, but also the founder of the now famous League of Legends International Company. You are known as a superhero comparable to Superman in the comics. Nick Fury is also smiling. Hawking waved his hands quickly, looking humble. It's just gathering some like-minded friends to do some good deeds. It can't be compared with S.H.I.E.L.D., which maintains world peace. He was not surprised that Nick Fury knew this. After all, Professor. Nick Fury looked at Hawking, paused and said, "Well, I won't go around with you. The purpose of my coming to you is very simple. I want you to do me a favor tomorrow. As a reward, I will have full authority to help you solve all your company's future troubles with the government." Quote. He has never paid less attention to Hawking. He has also secretly sent trusted people to investigate and collect relevant intelligence, and made detailed and professional assessments from all aspects. First of all, it is certain that Hawking has a kind heart, otherwise he would not have been able to insist on fighting crime and led others to fight crime together. But at the same time, I am not pedantic. I know how to make money to do what I want to do better and solve everyone's worries. Secondly, he is young but very experienced. He does everything right and is very difficult to deal with. Over the years, people who want to cause trouble for his company have been resolved by him in various ways. Finally, this is not a completely positive person, and he has a lot of blood on his hands. Therefore, for people like Hawking, it is not easy to use those tricks, but the talks will collapse, and it is not easy to use moral kidnapping like Professor X. The best way is to tell the truth, use conspiracy, and conduct transactions with tangible benefits. Sure enough, after hearing Nick Fury's words, Hawking became somewhat interested. "Let me first tell you what kind of help you can do. With my small body, I can help you with a little help, but I can't help you with a big help. Although the company now cooperates with the government and it is easier to do many things, it is still subject to many checks and balances. Just like their activities are limited to New York, once they leave New York, they are not allowed to use their abilities to fight criminals. There are also many detailed restrictions in all aspects. Nick Fury can't really let League of Legends, a company that is obviously closely related to the mutant school, develop so smoothly. He can't refuse Professor X's words, but he won't do his best. If Nick Fury is willing to fully help in the future, the company's development speed will definitely accelerate a lot. So, if the favor wasn't too difficult, he wouldn't mind helping. There are no permanent friends or permanent enemies in this world, only permanent interests. He personally agrees with this sentence. Even if it is a blood feud that wipes out a clan, if your enemy can help you resurrect your entire clan, you can temporarily become friends for this purpose. What's more, he and Nick Fury don't have any big hatred, they are still half allies. Nick Fury smiled. "For you, it's nothing, but someone may come to assassinate me tomorrow, and I need you to protect my safety in secret. And the strength of those people should not be worth mentioning to you." Quote. Director Fury, are you kidding? After hearing Nick Fury's words, Hawking narrowed his eyes. Isn't it ridiculous that the dignified director of S.H.I.E.L.D. should be protected by someone he has only met once? Not to mention Captain Marvel, who can blow up Kree battleships. Top agents like Black Widow, Hawkeye and May are not something ordinary people can deal with. If you take a step back, you can also ask Professor X and the X-Men who often cooperate with you for help. It is not his turn to come to him anyway. As if he still saw Hawking's doubts, Nick Fury explained. "This time I want to lure people into the urn and eliminate some mobs within our S.H.I.E.L.D., so I have apparently removed everyone else. And your professors and teachers are all in the school and under the surveillance range of the enemy. If you leave any one of them, you may alert the enemy. There is only you. I have never entered your information into S.H.I.E.L.D.'s system. It is the student's vacation now, so it is normal for you to leave school." Quote. Since Stryker was poisoned, he has been secretly investigating the S.H.I.E.L.D. agency he leads. No matter how perfect the penetration was, there would be no flaws, especially since the captured spy was from the S.H.I.E.L.D. Academy, which allowed him to find a breakthrough and discover some truths that made him unbelievable. Just because there is not enough evidence, he is not completely sure yet. However, he also hid some information that could be hidden and no longer entered it into S.H.I.E.L.D.'s system. Hawking's information is one of them. Hawking's intelligence in the S.H.I.E.L.D. system is still the intelligence collected during that battle. From then on, he has been attending school and having holidays like ordinary mutant students. The fact that he left school to fight criminals and founded the League of Legends International Company more than half a year ago was not in S.H.I.E.L.D.'s system. Of course, he couldn't hide something as big as studying that mutant child and developing potions and weapons to restrain mutants. If he did, he would be suspected. This is why even though he already has potions and weapons to deal with mutants, he has no intention of taking the initiative to cause trouble. There are big problems right now within S.H.I.E.L.D., not to mention everything else. That's why he took the initiative to confess to Professor X about researching mutant potions and weapons in order to maintain the current stability. But he didn't expect that before he took action to get rid of the moths inside, the moths somehow got the message and wanted to take his life first. Just in time, he followed the trend to see if he could completely eliminate these moths. However, he is also prepared to be rejected by Hawking. If Hawking refuses, then he also has a second and third plan, but there may be considerable losses in the later plans. The worm within S.H.I.E.L.D., Hydra. Upon hearing Nick Fury's explanation, Hawking remained calm on the surface, but was quite surprised on the inside. He didn't expect that Nick Fury would discover the traces of Hydra so many years in advance, and even know that Hydra was going to assassinate him. It seems that there are really many differences between different universes, and they should not be taken lightly. In fact, Hawking didn't know at this time that it was his appearance that made Nick Fury aware of Hydra in advance. Without Hawking, Stryker might have escaped. No Hydra agent would have been misunderstood to take the blame, Nick Fury would not have become suspicious, and Mystique would not have sent information to Hydra. There are many things in this universe and the main universe that are not exactly the same, but the gap is not too big. However, the appearance of Hawking has caused many things to undergo a 360-degree deflection. And it's getting more and more biased. Okay, I've done this for you. As long as I'm here, you won't die tomorrow. Hawking made an oak gesture. He still doesn't look down on a mere Hydra. And it seems good that S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra are fighting among themselves. Hydra is a much larger organization than Nick Fury knows now. Pierce, who controls S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters, is just one of them. Even if Pierce's team is eliminated and all Hydra agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. are eliminated, S.H.I.E.L.D. will be severely damaged and will have to track other Hydras later. It is estimated that in the next few years, these two organizations will not have time to find anything about him and the mutant school. The next day, the snow stopped, the sun rose, and it was a warm and sunny day. Nick Fury drove out of a secret S.H.I.E.L.D. base in Manhattan in his special black van, preparing to leave the city across a few streets to another base in the suburbs and take a plane to leave New York. On the roof of a 20-story building near him, Peter, wearing a spider tights, was staring at his car and asked Hawking standing aside. "Captain, you suddenly gathered us just to ask us to protect him. Who is he?" Originally, Hawking gave them a 2-week holiday at Christmas, so they didn't have to get together to fight criminals or do business and shoot commercials. As long as there were criminals nearby, they could just crack down on them. But last night, Hawking suddenly informed them to gather here early this morning and told them to protect the one-eyed man below. So they were naturally curious about who the one-eyed man was, and he actually asked so many of them to protect him. The director of S.H.I.E.L.D. is a self-righteous guy who likes to trick people into giving him free work. If you see him in the future, stay away from him. Don't believe anything he says. I brought you here today mainly to train you. Those who are going to kill this guy later are all elites among human beings, and they have probably been injected with body-strengthening drugs, and their physical fitness is extraordinary. Quote. Hawking explained, the most powerful enemies that Peter and the others usually deal with are just gang members and robbers armed with guns. Those are not their enemies at all and have little training effect. But the Hydra agent who came to kill Nick Fury was different this time. They were definitely the most powerful agents, and they might even have been injected with the drugs developed by Hydra to enhance the human body, so that Peter and the others could use them to improve their actual combat experience. Then, those who want to kill the one-eyed dragon below are all bad people. Since they are bad people, can I eat their heads? The venom in Eddie's body poked his head out expectantly and asked. You want to eat people's heads again? It's so disgusting. Eddie couldn't help but complain after hearing this. Venom was immediately dissatisfied. Follow you, you let me eat chicken heads every day, it's too unpalatable, I want to eat the heads of those bad guys. Okay, today is a special situation. You are allowed to eat, but remember, don't eat too much. Hawking thought for a moment and agreed to Venom's request. It can't be too harsh. It seems to have started. At this time, Jessica, who had been monitoring with a telescope, quickly shouted. Hawking looked down and saw Nick Fury's car being hit as it passed through an intersection. Then several Hydra agents disguised as police officers drove up quickly in police cars and blocked Nick Fury's car from all directions, making it impossible to move. Go on, don't rush to save him first, wait until he can't hold on anymore, then take action. He promised not to let Nick Fury be killed, but he didn't say he wouldn't let him suffer. Chapter 91. As expected of a level 10 SHIELD agent, he still has 2 skills. Hawking looked down at the desperate situation, surrounded by hundreds of the most elite Hydra agents, but still relied on various means to save himself, and even killed a dozen Hydra agents Nick Fury, which is also rare. He let out an exclamation of admiration. In fact, he believed that he was not Nick Fury's last resort. Even if he asked Peter and others to take action at this time, Nick Fury, who couldn't hold on anymore, would definitely have a way to notify Captain Marvel to save him. With Captain Marvel's speed, it wouldn't take long even if he came from outer space. It's just that if Captain Marvel moves, Hydra will definitely notice that it may affect Nick Fury's plans, so they will ask him for help. Army attack. Seeing that Nick Fury was about to die, Hawking finally gave the order to take action. After receiving the signal, the 3 Peters who had arrived around the battlefield came on stage one after another. It's hunting time. Venom was the first to appear. He jumped directly onto a police car that was stuck in Nick Fury's car. He reached out and grabbed 2 Hydra agents who were shooting wildly, and ate their heads one by one. Ah, this is the real deliciousness. What the hell? The Hydra agents who reacted immediately turned some of their firepower to Venom. Nick Fury, who was hiding in the car and holding his ribs, finally breathed a sigh of relief when he saw this, and put away the communicator made by Kree technology in his hand. Meet the judgment. Next to appear was Venom, Spider-Man Peter, who landed on the roof of Nick Fury's car with a web of webbing. He raised his hand and a stream of webbing shot out, instantly tying up the Hydra agents with their guns. A solid one. Has the super weapon been installed? The person in charge of this assassination mission frowned when he saw Venom and Spider-Man on the stage, and asked an agent next to him. According to the information he had, these superheroes had been inactive during the holidays recently, so they probably wouldn't be around here. Why did 2 of them suddenly appear? The installation has been completed. Then start immediately and make Nick Fury and the 2 troublemakers disappear. There was a sneer on the person in charge's face. The super weapon is Dr. Zola, a powerful weapon improved on the Hydra energy weapon from World War II. Because there is no energy from the space gem, electricity conversion is used instead. It takes a while to install and fix the energy in the early stage, but it can destroy everything within a radius of dozens of meters with one shot. Even Nick Fury's car, which has been modified to withstand rockets, will be reduced to ashes under the attack of a super weapon. Behind the intersection, a large machine that was more than 3 meters tall and looked like a cannon was assembled by several Hydra agents. Then, under a burst of manipulation, blue energy fluctuations began to appear. However, before the energy was completely converted, a metal javelin suddenly fell from the sky at an extremely terrifying speed, and actually penetrated the cannon in one fell swoop, followed by 4 more in a row, completely shutting down the cannon. It's time to show off your real skills. Everyone looked up and saw a girl with a shield in her left hand and a javelin in her right hand, floating above their heads. The 3rd superhero of the League of Legends, the Flying Female Knight, appears. They usually face low-level characters, so they fight more casually, and they basically don't know how to cooperate or use weapons. But this time, because they were facing Hydra's elite agents, they might be injured, so for the first time they used the team fighting method they had rehearsed. Venom, which ignores most damage and is the most powerful, acts as a front-row human shield and can be controlled by webs, and Peter, who has spider sense, assists in killing. Finally, Jessica, who can fly in the sky, takes charge of the overall situation, checks for deficiencies, and acts as a long-range damage at the same time. Jessica has great strength and can fly, but she has no spider sense and her defense is about the same as that of ordinary people. Once she is hit by a bullet, she will also be seriously injured. Therefore, Hawking did not recommend that she fight in close combat. Instead, he asked her to fly in the air with a large shield with strong defensive power, and then use the retractable metal javelin made by the Green Goblin to project it from a distance. You must know that there are not many characters who can fly in the Marvel world. Flying high in the sky can make most enemies helpless. And with a large shield for defense, ordinary firearms cannot hurt her. Finally, with Jessica's power, the javelin shot downward from high in the sky was naturally so powerful that it could probably penetrate a tank. When 3 people fight together, their combat effectiveness will at least double. As for why Hawking didn't join in, the difference in strength is too big, and they really can't match each other, just like a king and a bronze. Try to capture them alive. Director Fury probably needs to pry something out of these agents' mouths. Seeing that the Hydra agents, with the not-so-tacit cooperation of the 3 Peters, were beaten with little power to fight back, Hawking slowly landed next to Nick Fury's car. Director Fury, you're a little late. Are you okay? You kid, you must have done this on purpose. Nick Fury held his broken ribs and rolled his eyes angrily. Hawking looked innocent when he heard this. Director Fury really likes to joke. How could I, Hawking, be that kind of person? Nick Fury twitched, then turned to look at the 3 Peters who were fighting in front, and said in a somewhat complicated tone. This team of yours seems to be as good as the X-Men. He asked Hawking for help because he valued Hawking's strength, but he didn't expect that Hawking's 3-man team had already completed the mission without Hawking's intervention at all. Of course he knew about this team under Hawking, but he had never paid attention to it before. A nerdy high school student who was bitten by a spider half a year ago, an ordinary girl who was accidentally infected by military chemicals, and a powerless reporter who seemed to be infected with alien genes some time ago. These are just ordinary people who accidentally gained some abilities, just like the mutant students who awakened their abilities. Under Hawking's care, they can just about fight those criminals. But he didn't expect that the 3 of them would be able to exert such a strong combat effectiveness with the cooperation, which made him somewhat regret the conditions he had agreed to with Hawking. If League of Legends continues to develop in this form, it will definitely be a force that cannot be ignored in the future. It's okay, but it's definitely not comparable to the X-Men. Hawking smiled and didn't explain much. It's too late to realize this now. The company has already established its footing and has been recognized by the public, and I believe that Nick Fury will not have the energy to deal with him in the future. I can't hold it anymore. Activate the Hydra Captain. Seeing that these elite Hydra agents were almost defeated by the trio, the Hydra agent in charge of this operation could only use the last resort. Originally, according to his plan, Nick Fury was bound to die. Unexpectedly, there was an accident and they were rescued by those superheroes. Now they can only activate the last trump card. It's just that if Captain Hydra is activated in the city, even if Nick Fury is killed, it will be more troublesome later. Because the Hydra Captain is too conspicuous. It looks like it's coming to an end. Seeing that only a few Hydra agents were left with their heads eaten or tied up with spider webs and hung up, Hawking handed an OK bomb to Nick Fury and said with a smile. Just stick it on, and you can go back to treatment in a while. No, this little injury is nothing. Nick Fury's eyes twitched. Be careful, I feel like it's not that simple. 2. Hawking nodded. If he remembered correctly, Hydra should also have the Winter Soldier as its trump card. But Winter Soldier, Peter should be able to handle it on his own. What's coming? At this moment, his ears twitched and he suddenly looked up into the sky. That's Iron Man. The thing flying towards this side at this time is a huge mecha. It looks a bit like the first Mark suit made by Iron Man in the movie, but it is obviously more than 10 times larger. That's why he mistakenly thought it was Iron Man. It's just not right. It's only 2004, there are still a few years before Tony becomes Iron Man, and I've never heard that Tony has developed the Iron Man suit in advance. Hydra Stomper. Nick Fury, who was half lying in the car at this time, also saw the huge mecha flying in the distance, and he suddenly sat up in shock. After hearing this, Hawking immediately asked, "What Hydra Stomper?" The Hydra Stomper is a humanoid mecha piloted by Captain Carter's friend Steve Rogers. It came from an accidental experiment by Howard Stark. There is only one of them. It assisted Captain Carter in defeating the Red Skull. But then he disappeared unexpectedly, and there are still no clues. Let your teammates beware. The Hydra Stomper is extremely powerful and could crush tanks and bend gun barrels during World War II. Now it seems that it has been modified and upgraded again by Hydra. Not only is it several times larger, it is also estimated to have a lot of weapons installed. Quote, seeing the appearance of the Hydra Stomper, Nick Fury's expression suddenly became serious. But Hawking was stunned on the spot. Hydra Steve. When he read Pietro's comics, he only knew that the super soldier potion was accidentally injected into Carter, so the history of Captain America was rewritten and he became Captain Carter. But I didn't expect that there were other situations. In other words, the person controlling the mecha now should be Hydra Steve Rogers, whose memory was washed away by Hydra and then turned into a puppet. Well, it doesn't really matter, it has nothing to do with him. The big guy is coming, you three be careful. Hawking gave a warning. But as soon as he finished speaking, the Hydra Trampler, who was still some distance away, had already launched a long-range attack. 4 small missiles flew out directly from its back, aiming directly at Jessica, who had control of the air. Jessica reacted quickly and dodged immediately. Unexpectedly, the missile actually had a tracking function, and it turned around and continued to shoot at her the moment it missed. She had no time to dodge, so she had to pick up a large shield in front of her and resist. Boom, 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 boom. Jessica was blasted directly from the air. Fortunately, Peter, who has a spider sense, immediately shot out spider silk to stick to Jessica and rescued her. Venom grabbed the Hydra police car next to it and smashed it with all his strength at the Hydra Trampler in the air. But perhaps due to the distance, the Hydra Trampler easily dodged the blow. Arriving above the battlefield, the Hydra Trampler immediately aimed his hands in the direction of the black car where Hawking and Nick Fury were sitting. His mission was to kill Nick Fury, and nothing else mattered. Just when he was about to fire a powerful explosive bomb at the black car, 2 metal javelins accurately pierced his hands. It was Jessica who had recovered and fired the long-range javelin attack. At the same time, Peter and Venom, who had already taken advantage of the opportunity to arrive at the buildings on both sides, also flew towards the Hydra Tramplers from both sides. Peter circled around it quickly like a spider, trying to wrap its silk into a pupa. Venom, on the other hand, uses his liquefied body and powerful strength to work hard to destroy the armor on the Hydra Trampler. The Hydra Trampler was forced to land, and then he activated his rapidly rotating blades and various high-tech weapons to drive away the 2 men. At the same time, because the size of the Hydra Trampler was too large, it was very eye-catching when flying in the air, attracting many ordinary people who were watching the excitement and gathered towards the battlefield. This includes the famous Tony Stark. 2 minutes ago, Tony Stark was driving a luxury sports car on the streets of New York and was rushing to the Stark Group building. I had too much fun with some Hollywood actresses last night, so I got up late this morning. What is that? A huge green mecha flew over his head, which immediately caught his attention. After observing it carefully, he immediately kicked the accelerator and chased after the mecha. Because he had already recognized that it was the humanoid pilotable mecha called Hydra Trampler that his father had talked about when he was alive. His father once said that during World War II, with the help of a special item, he accidentally created a very powerful pilotable humanoid mecha. Later, his father always wanted to mass-produce it, but he failed because of immature technology. After years of research, only a large arc reactor was left in the headquarters Stark building that could only be used for viewing but could not be used in practical applications. But today, he actually saw with his own eyes the mecha that his father had been obsessed with, so how could he give up just like that? Chasing the Hydra Trampler, which was much larger than what his father said, he soon came to the outskirts of the intersection where Nick Fury was ambushed. It's just that at this time, police officers playing the role of Hydra agents had already set up roadblocks in the periphery to remind them to check the road and take a detour. But how could he be a stickler for the rules? He simply ignored the roadblocks set up by the police and rushed in. Soon, he saw the battle between the 3 Peters and the Hydra Tramplers from a distance. Is this a darkening strong 3-pointer? Sitting in the passenger seat, Hawking thought to himself as he watched the battle between the 3 Peters and the Hydra Stomper operated by Steve in front of him. Even if the real Captain America had to deal with Peter, Venom and Jessica at the same time, he probably wouldn't have a good chance of winning. But now Steve, who was controlling the mecha, after a brief fight with the 3 Peters, relied on the various weapons on the mecha to suppress the 3 of them. Not that this mecha is really that powerful. The power displayed by the mecha is indeed very strong, but Peter, Jessica and Venom are weak in power, and each has other abilities so they can fight as a team. In addition, the three of them have smaller bodies and are more flexible, while the mecha has a larger body and bigger flaws, so they shouldn't be suppressed. The real power is Steve Rogers, who controls the machine inside and has rich combat experience and strong combat instincts. This reminded him of the first time Steve met Peter in the main world. His strength and reaction speed were not as good as Peter's, but he easily suppressed Peter with his combat experience. Also, after picking up Mjolnir and gaining the power of Thor, you can also fight Thanos without gems. Steve's strength is not only due to the bottle of Super Soldier Potion, but the power given to him by that bottle of Super Soldier Potion may not necessarily be comparable to that of an ordinary soldier in Asgard. But he became one of the most important leaders of the Avengers. Compared with Steve, who has rich combat experience, Peter and Jessica have just entered college and have only acquired their abilities for more than half a year. Although they have his guidance and training, they are still far behind. Venom is better. Eddie can't fight, but Venom's fighting instinct is pretty good. But this was the reason why he brought 3 people here. Otherwise, if he had taken action himself, the battle would have been over long ago. Aren't you going to help? Nick Fury looked at Hawking, who was looking at ease, and tried to explore without moving. In his opinion, Hawking was too calm. The strength of this Hydra trampler was not weak. If an accident happened, would Hawking really be able to rescue him in time? He knew that Huo Jin was strong, but that meant transforming into a giant ape. Before the transformation, he was not that strong. In other words, Hawking's strength is actually much stronger than he expected. After all, almost 4 years have passed. Pre-teen mutants are usually unable to fully develop and control their abilities. Their abilities will become stable and powerful as they grow older. Of course, he knows this common sense. Hawking smiled and shook his head. I will take action if there is danger. The Hydra trampler was also severely beaten by the 3 Peters at this time, and half of his arm was removed. It was hard to say who would win and who would lose. You're really sharp. You actually noticed the Venom's weakness so quickly. On the battlefield, the Hydra Stomper used the powerful fire-breathing device in the mecha to severely injure Venom at the cost of completely losing that half of his arm, forcing him to temporarily retreat into Eddie's body to recuperate. After carefully recalling the battle just now, Hawking quickly understood what happened. Steve is probably the most difficult Venom to find, ignoring all kinds of damage. He subconsciously avoids the flamethrower on his mecha every time, so he knows that Venom's weakness may be fire. But he did not show it, but kept holding back. In the end, with the loss of half of his arm, which was not very important, he seized the opportunity to severely injure Venom and made him withdraw from the battlefield. Sit in the back. Venom was temporarily unable to fight. Eddie was just an ordinary person, and Hawking asked him to sit in the back. Without the human shield of Venom, the fight between Peter and Jessica was even more difficult, but the Hydra trampler's movements were obviously much slower. It was unknown whether it was due to damage to the body or lack of energy. The smoke bomb seems wrong, it's sleeping gas. However, at this moment, the battlefield changed again. After Steve found that Jessica was difficult to catch at high altitude, he released smoke bombs to prevent her from seeing the battle scene below clearly, and then used instruments to locate Peter to attack. Peter didn't panic at all because he had a spider sense, and boldly dealt with it, hoping to consume the mecha's energy and bring it down. Unexpectedly, it didn't take long before I felt dizzy and then fainted. It turns out that Steve released not only smoke bombs, but also mixed with sleeping gas. Peter's spider sense made it difficult for him to be hit, but how could he hide in a large area of smoke? The more hypnotic gas you inhale as you exercise, the more likely you will be infected. When she discovered that Peter's voice had disappeared from the communicator, Jessica, who had no idea what was going on in the air, became concerned and confused. She rushed down regardless of everything, and naturally fainted on the ground with Peter. Just when Steve was about to pilot the Hydra Stomper, take out the unconscious Peter and Jessica, and then kill Nick Fury to complete the mission, Hawking finally took action. The wind is swirling. Putting on the golden armor, he reached forward and pointed forward, using the whirlwind spell, and all the smoke was cleared away in an instant. Zombies are floating. Then he clicked twice on the unconscious Peter and Jessica. The two of them floated directly into the air and flew in front of Hawking. Seeing this, Steve over there quickly raised his remaining right hand, quickly gathering all the remaining energy, intending to take the opportunity to kill the target and all interferers in one fell swoop. When Hawking saw this, he just raised his hand slightly. Kiwan slash. A rotating disc of air burst out under Hawking's thoughts, shooting directly at the right arm of the Hydra trampler. Upon seeing this, Steve quickly operated the mecha to avoid danger and ducked sideways. Unfortunately, Chi-Yuan slash is not a bullet. It will not turn when it is fired. Under Hawking's thoughts, it also deflected and hit directly the right arm that was gathering energy. Brush. As if cutting tofu, the entire right arm of the Hydra trampler fell directly. However, this was not the end. Under the control of Hawking, the Chi-Yuan slash wandered around the Hydra trampler for a while before gradually dissipating. Brush, brush, brush. In an instant, the Hydra trampler's head, left leg, right leg and other parts were all turned into smooth fragments, leaving only the middle chest cockpit containing Steve, which was still intact. No matter how much experience, strategy, or plan you have in the face of absolute power, it's all in vain. Are you right, Director Fury? Quote, handing Peter and Jessica to Eddie, Hawking said pointedly towards Nick Fury. Don't you want to test my bottom line? Then let me take a good look at you. I will see you flustered and fearful. Mr. Hawking has a point. Nick Fury was quite shocked when he saw that the Hydra trampler who had just defeated the three Peters was like a toy in front of Hawking and was easily solved with one move. It turns out that even if Hawking doesn't turn into a giant ape at this time, he already has such terrifying strength. The mission is not over yet, I can fight like this all day long. While Hawking was talking to Nick Fury, the remaining cockpit was suddenly kicked open. A man with big breasts wearing a black tight-fitting suit and a very perky butt walked away with a square-shaped shield. Come out. He shouted loudly, rushed towards Hawking at an extremely fast speed, and then launched a set of vicious combos, hitting Hawking's vitals with each move. Even after being brainwashed by Hydra, this never-give-up character has not changed. As expected of you, Mr. Buttocks. Seeing that Hydra Steve planned to engage in hand-to-hand combat with him, Hawking smiled and shook his head. His body stayed still and he just stretched out two fingers to block all Hydra Steve's moves. Down. Obviously, although the thin Steve was not injected with the genuine super soldier drug due to an accident, he was also injected with the drug developed by Hydra after being controlled by Hydra. So now he has still become the muscular man with a super figure, but the uniform he is wearing has become black, and the uniform is also printed with the Hydra logo. The shield changed from a vibranium shield to a square-shaped metal shield. But even so, under Hawking's absolute strength and speed, these skills of his were of no use at all. If you use 4 tails in Tai Chi to dial 1,000, the upper limit is only 1,000 caddies. It is impossible for you to dial 1,000,000 caddies. Mr. Hawking, if you can, please don't hurt his life. He should be Steve Rogers of the Howling Commandos during World War II. He may have been controlled by Hydra in a special way. Nick Fury, who was sitting in the car, took a closer look at Steve's appearance and quickly recognized that he was the Steve that Captain Carter was looking for, who had disappeared for decades. Although he has become much stronger, as a level 10 agent, he still has the ability to identify people. Not to mention the Hydra trampler who also disappeared at that time. Collapse. Reaching out to flick off Steve's shield, Hawking suddenly accelerated, reached out and touched Steve's forehead, and knocked Steve down with a stun spell. Even if Nick Fury doesn't speak, he won't kill Steve. He doesn't completely consider interests when doing things, and he still has some humanity. It's not easy for Steve and Carter, the pair of hard luck lovers, either he is frozen or she is in a different space. Director Fury, you owe me another favor. After putting Steve down, Hawking picked him up and handed him to Nick Fury and smiled. Nick Fury was stunned for a moment and said helplessly, "Okay, I owe you a favor." "Ha ha ha, you're kidding, Director Fury, you don't have a sense of humor at all." Hawking, am the kind of person who cares about everything." Hawking smiled, and then a few waking spells woke up the unconscious Peter and Jessica. "Director Fury, since the mission is completed, we will withdraw." After waving hello, he led the trio out of the intersection. After the 4 Hawkings left, Nick Fury murmured, This guy, I can't see through him now. Forcibly interrupting his thoughts, the focus should not be on Hawking now, but on the next plan. He put Steve in the back seat of the car and turned on the communicator. Hill, inform Coulson that the second phase of the plan to eliminate Hydra has been launched. While waiting for the SHIELD agents loyal to him to arrive, he came to the broken Hydra trampler and couldn't help but sigh. It's broken like this. I don't know if it can be repaired. At this time, Tony Stark, who was standing in the distance and observing the situation here, sat back in his sports car, then stepped on the accelerator and left here. Halfway through the car, he said in the sports car, "Jarvis, call Pepper." "Yes, sir." A magnetic male voice immediately sounded in the car. After a while, the call was connected, and Tony ordered, "Little Pepper, put down all the entertainment I have for the next 2 months, including those from the military. I want to concentrate on researching a new technology." The battle he just saw gave him great inspiration. Thinking of the Hydra trampler mecha that his father had always been obsessed with during his lifetime, he was determined to shrink the arc reactor and use it as a power source to make a set of battle armor. However, he didn't like the big, stupid, and ugly-looking Hydra trampler just now. He wanted to make a kind of armor that could be worn close to the body, far superior to the cool armor invented by his father. And he suddenly became interested in those superheroes. Maybe after making it himself, he could also use the armor to become a superhero, which would be quite popular. Thinking about it, I'm actually a little excited. On the other side, after leading a team of 3 people to have a post-war summary meeting, Hawking also let them go home. And he himself found a deserted place, transformed into Naruto every day, and then used psychic and reverse psychic techniques to come to Miaomu Mountain. Ever since he got the Naruto template, he would go to Miaomu Mountain every day to get familiar with it. As for the fact that the 9 tails would disappear from Naruto's body every time it was loaded, Naruto said he didn't mind at all. Because the last time he fought with Orochimaru, he used the power of the 9 tails to hurt Sakura, so he decided that no matter how dangerous it was in the future, he would no longer be bewitched by the 9 tails and use the power of the 9 tails. Of course, after his relationship with the Toads got better and better during this period, he also made some attempts. For example, sign a contract with the Toads again and actually write your name on the contract scroll to see if you can go to the world of Naruto through spiritualism after the protagonist template ends. However, the result was that it didn't work. After Naruto's template was loaded, there was no reaction at all when he used the psychic technique. Therefore, he concluded that necromancy, a time-space ninjutsu that was not rare in the Hokage world, could not be teleported across different worlds. He even felt that even if he learned the Flying Thunder God technique in the future, he would not be able to cross the 2 worlds. You must know that the world of Marvel is already very huge, with countless universes. If you want to cross such a large world and go to another world, how can it be possible with a small psychic technique? When loading Naruto's template, it worked. He thought it was because of the magical golden finger of the panel as a bridge. "Boss Toad, how about the tobacco from my world that I brought you last time?" "Toad Guang, you're practicing the double sword technique again. Come on, I'll accompany you through 2 moves." "Master Shijian, your set of kitchen utensils is too backward. I will give you a set of the top kitchen utensils in our world. It is guaranteed to be 10 times better than yours, and the food you cook will be 10 times more delicious." "Toad Lee, don't say I'm not a friend enough, this is the best lipstick in our world." Along the way, Hawking could chat with almost every Toad, and every Toad had a good relationship with him. Can the relationship be bad? In the entire Miaomu Mountain, except for the big Toad Immortal who is always sleeping, almost every named Toad has received a gift from Hawking, maybe more than once. And many of the gifts are not available in their world, and they are all given according to their preferences. It is said that they are short-sighted and use their tricks, and the same is true for the Toads in Miaomu Mountain. Therefore, even though Huo Jin was a human being who accidentally signed a contract with the Toad clan, everyone liked him very much, and they basically had no objections to any requests as long as they were not excessive. For example, you need to formally sign your name on the contract scroll. For Hawking, those are things that can be bought for a small amount of money and are not worth mentioning. If he wanted to gain favor without spending money, Hawking was not that good of a talker, so he used this simplest and most effective method. Hey, Naruto, you're here so early. Seeing Naruto sitting cross-legged on a stone and meditating, Hawking stepped forward and said hello. When Naruto saw Hawking, he immediately jumped up from the stone. Huo Jin, you came just in time. I still didn't use the residual image fist you taught me last time very well. Please teach me again. Okay, this residual image fist, you want it like this. After hearing what Naruto said, Hawking patiently explained. The location of Miaomu Mountain is extremely remote. Even if Hawking uses Wukong to fly at full strength, at his current speed, he will not be able to fly very far in an hour, let alone do other things. So he wanted to leave Mt. Miaomu to learn more ninjutsu. Naruto's value was self-evident. As long as Naruto is Psychic Toad, he can follow him directly to Naruto. Just after Naruto returned to Konoha, Kakashi was still recovering from his injuries, and Jiraiya left the village to collect materials. He wanted to improve his strength so that he could catch up with Sasuke, but he had no clue. So Hawking asked Naruto to come to Miaomu Mountain frequently to communicate with him on the pretext of teaching Naruto the residual image boxing. After getting along with him for this period of time, Naruto already regarded him as an excellent friend. I had Naruto's memory, knew all his preferences, and was willing to teach some special moves and taijutsu skills, so how could I not win? After some exchanges, Naruto was finally able to successfully use the second image fist. Hawking, thank you so much. By the way, I have good news for you. Granny Tsunade has agreed to let you visit Konoha. Quote. That's great. What you have always seen is the Konoha in your memory. This time you can finally see the real Konoha. Hawking's eyes lit up immediately after hearing this. He has always wanted to go to Konoha to see if he can get more ninjutsu from Konoha, but because it involves the Nine Tails, Naruto and Jiraiya must report his situation to the current 5th Hokage, Tsunade. As the Hokage, Tsunade naturally wanted to inform other high-level officials in Konoha about this matter. In view of the fact that this matter is too bizarre, Naruto is not allowed to use psychic techniques to channel Hawking before the specific results are discussed. Now it seems that the high-level officials of Konoha must have come up with the result and want to see him. There is not much time left today, so at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning, you can channel me on time. At the end of the hour, Hawking, who was automatically sent back to the Marvel world, immediately took out his phone and called the purchasing manager of his company. I need you to purchase these things immediately. The next day, 11 o'clock. Hawking left home and found a relatively remote place, loaded the Naruto template, skillfully used necromancy to summon a little toad, and then used reverse necromancy to come to Miaomu Mountain. Naruto, who sensed the disappearance of the Nine Tails in his body, also waited for a while and used the psychic technique in the Hokage's office. Boom! Hawking and a little toad were channeled from Mount Miaomu. Yo, Hawking! Yo, Naruto! After saying hello, Hawking quickly glanced at the surrounding environment. According to Naruto's memory, this should be the Hokage's office. As for the people in the office, the three standing next to them are Yamato, Sakura, and Sai from the new Class 7. And the yellow-haired beauty sitting in the center in front of her with great truth is Tsunade, the 5th Hokage. The two old men and women standing on the left are Konoha consultants Mito Kadoin and Kaharu. The old man on the right standing with a bandage on his body and a cane with a gloomy face is the leader of the root group. Tibetan. The young and beautiful black-haired woman in the back is Tsunade's apprentice and assistant Shizune. At this time, the people in the room were also looking at Hawking. Although I had already learned the relevant information about Hawking from Naruto, I was still a little surprised when I saw it with my own eyes, because it really looked like Naruto. This young and beautiful sister must be the 5th Hokage of Konoha. This is the first time we meet. My name is Hawking. After understanding the current situation, Hawking immediately greeted Tsunade. When Tsunade heard Hawking's words, she laughed boldly. Hawking, you can talk. Since you told Naruto that you wanted to come to Konoha, let him take you for a walk. Thank you, Hokage-sama, but don't worry yet. Hawking smiled, then took out a small square from his pocket and placed it on Tsunade's desk. This is my first visit, and I didn't prepare any expensive gifts. It's just a small gesture. Please don't mind, Hokage-sama. What is this? It looks familiar. Tsunade picked up the small square and looked at it in front of her eyes. Hawking laughed and said, Lord Hokage, please put it on the ground first. Tsunade did as she was told and placed the small square on the ground next to her. Hawking stretched out his hand to remove the magic on the small square. The small square immediately returned to its original size and turned into a slot machine. Adults can play 2 games while taking a break from official duties. Yes, you have a great future. If anyone bullies you in the village in the future, just come and tell your sister, and she will help you teach him a lesson. When Tsunade saw it was a slot machine, her eyes nearly popped out of her head with joy. Since she came back to take over the position of Hokage, Shizune has been watching her every day. She hasn't gambled twice in a long time, and her hands are itching. Tsunade-sama. When Shizune standing behind saw this, her face turned dark. Hawking immediately took out a mini box and restored it, then opened it and handed it to Shizune. This must be Miss Shizune. This is the most professional and complete surgical tool in our world, given to you. Wow, your world actually has so many medical tools. Shizune opened the box and was immediately attracted by the exquisite surgical tools inside. As a medical ninja, she had no resistance to these things. These two must be Konoha's Dinghai Shenzhen, Menyon and Lord Xiaomura, please be careful. Could this be Danzo-sama, be careful. You must be Naruto's favorite Captain Yamato, be careful. Sakura, she is indeed the most beautiful girl in Konoha, be careful. Saoi, the most trustworthy teammate and an indispensable member of Team 7, come on, be careful. In less than 10 minutes, except for Naruto, almost everyone in the office had a satisfying gift in their hands, and most people's favorability towards Hawking increased a lot. Naruto, Sakura and Sai, please take Hawking for a walk around the village. After the gift giving was over, Hawking followed Team 7 and left the Hokage's office in a peaceful atmosphere. Not long after they left, Danzo kicked the wheelchair in front of him aside and said, this Hawking doesn't seem to be as innocent as the Jinchuriki said. He must have ulterior motives for coming to Konoha. Danzo-sama, you are worrying too much. I think this child is quite good. Since we cannot figure out and solve the problem of the transfer of the Kyuubi for the time being, let's treat him as a guest first. Tsunade touched the slot machine next to her, looking impatient. She wasn't crazy, and it wasn't because of the slot machine in front of her that she could buy for a little money, but she already knew it. According to the current information, as long as Hawking is willing, he can transfer the 9 tails from Naruto for an hour at any time. If this problem is not solved, even if Hawking has some purpose in coming to Konoha, he cannot act rashly. What's more, Hawking has always been very friendly, and they can't treat him in a bad way. Finally, even if Hawking really had a purpose, he could only come to Konoha for a maximum of 1 hour a day, and he had to ask Naruto to be a psychic. Once Naruto was not psychic, he would not be able to force his way over. By the way, Danzo-sama, don't be angry. After all, your eyes and arms are injured, you are still on crutches, and you are so old. It is reasonable for him to give you a wheelchair. There must be no other meaning. HMPH, since Hokage-sama has said so, I don't have anything to say, so let's leave it at that. Danzo replied expressionlessly and left the Hokage's office on crutches. In fact, of course he looked down upon a child like Hawking. To him, Hawking was just a humanoid psychic beast, and a time-limited humanoid psychic beast. What he said was just an excuse to use the topic so that if something happened in the future, it would give him one more reason to blame Tsunade. The 3rd generation is dead and Tsunade succeeds to the throne. His biggest goal now is to get rid of Tsunade and make himself the Hokage. What do the 2 advisors think? Seeing Danzo leaving, Tsunade turned to look at Mito Kaden and Kaharu. The 2 looked at the gifts in their hands and finally replied. We think there should be no problem, but it's best to send Anbu to monitor it for a while. Okay, let's do this. Yamato, please work harder, and I'll leave the task of monitoring Hawking to you. Tsunade nodded and ordered Yamato. Yamato was originally a good player in Anbu, and now he is the new captain of Team 7. He is a perfect fit both overtly and covertly. Yes, Hokage-sama. Yamato nodded and disappeared from the spot with a teleportation technique. On the other side, Hawking, who had just arrived downstairs of the Hokage building with Naruto and the other 3, stretched out his hand and changed the sportswear on his body that was the same as Naruto's. At the same time, He took off Konoha's forehead protector and briefly did his hair. Hokage-sama probably doesn't want too many people to know about what happened between me and Naruto. I'll sort it out a little so that it won't easily arouse suspicion. Naruto is the Nine Tails Jinchuriki, and he can take away the 9 tails for an hour every day. How could Tsunade make such information known to everyone? So he had long heard from Naruto that Tsunade had ordered that no one in the village should be informed of this matter except Team 7, and his identity was MT. Myoboku's guest in Konoha. In this case, it wouldn't be good if he looked so similar to Naruto. What kind of ninjutsu is that of yours? How can you still change clothes? Sakura looked curious as she watched Hawking change his clothes instantly. The transformation technique means that the whole body changes together, but the clothes cannot be changed individually. I know, Hawking told me that this is magic, a power in their world. Before Hawking could answer, Naruto had already explained it to him. He often saw Hawking using magic at MT. Miamu, so he naturally asked the same question. Magic, if I knew this, I wouldn't have to buy clothes anymore. I could make all kinds of beautiful clothes. It would be great. Sakura's eyes suddenly brightened. No, we can't learn it. Hawking said that to learn magic, you must have the blood of a wizard, just like our bloodline limit. This is innate and cannot be learned. Naruto replied again for Hawking. Hawking smiled. You can tell me what kind of clothes you want, Sakura, and I can help you change them, but they can only last for 4 or 5 hours, and they will return to their original shape by then. Is it really possible? Sakura had a look of anticipation on her face. Hawking reached out to Sakura and gently said, Flavi. Sakura's red coat immediately turned into a beautiful dress. Looking at the clothes on her body, Sakura, who had a good first impression of Hawking because of receiving gifts, now has a favorable impression. So next, under the leadership of Naruto, Sakura and Sai, Hawking started his 1-hour tour of Konoha. Because the time was limited, I didn't go to many places. I just walked half a street and ate more than 100 bowls of Konoha's most famous Ichiraku ramen. As for who paid, Naruto should have paid originally, but how could the generous Hawking let the poor Naruto pay? He used the gold bars prepared in advance to exchange a large number of world coins on the street in advance. So Hawking paid for the guests along the way. Perhaps in the eyes of others, Hawking is like a big enemy who came to this world to give gifts and treat guests. But only Hawking himself knew that the money was nothing to him. Any superhero in the company could easily earn it back by accepting an advertisement. What he needs now is to increase his favorability, make Konoha ninjas like him, and reduce Konoha ninjas' wariness about him. Only in this way can he ensure that he can be channeled to Konoha by Naruto normally. Only by being channeled to Konoha by Naruto can he have the opportunity to obtain the ninjutsu of Konoha. It tastes great. My time is up. It's my first time visiting Konoha. I'm very happy. I'll see you tomorrow. After Ichiraku finished his ramen, Hawking waved goodbye to the 3 Narutos. Before the 3 of them could react, he disappeared out of thin air. Can we really only stay for an hour? Seeing Hawking disappear without a trace, Sakura couldn't help but sigh. Hawking, I feel like he is a very gentle and kind person. Although the contact lasted only an hour, Hawking gave her a very good feeling. Not just because of his generosity and comfortable way of speaking, but of course this also accounts for part of the reason. The main thing is that feeling, a feeling that is different from their world. In the entire ninja world, Konoha is already the most peaceful and prosperous place, but there is still a lot of darkness hidden inside. Not to mention the experience over the years, I had a deep understanding of it during the Chunin examination. From the time you become a ninja, you will experience these, more or less. Except for a neurotic person like Naruto, it's hard for anyone to remain pure at heart. Most ninjas have some mental problems, even herself. The feeling Hawking gave her was very special. It didn't mean it was spotless, but it was a feeling she couldn't quite place. If Hawking knew what Sakura was feeling at this time, he would know what she wanted to express. Is Hawking a good man? Not really, but he is a normal person who grew up in a truly peaceful era. Maybe his growth was not perfect and he lacked family affection, but he has always grown up healthily. He was not like ninjas like Sakura and the others, who had already started taking missions when they were only 11 or 12 years old. carrying out various killings, with blood on their hands, and watching friends, companions, and even relatives they knew die one by one. Sometimes, for the benefit of the village, one has to refrain from doing things that go against one's own conscience. When he was 11 or 12 years old, he had not even graduated from elementary school. Later, even when he came to the Marvel world, his hands began to be stained with blood, but by then his mind had already matured and his 3 views had been finalized. And even in the Marvel world, he always does things according to his heart and does what he thinks is right. He has a warm family and people he wants to protect. Therefore, he may appear cunning, difficult to deal with, deep-minded, and calculating, but he will definitely not be psychologically twisted, perverted, or dark. These are some essential differences brought about by different worlds and different environments. In fact, Sakura is pretty good like this. Look at Naruto, who has been ostracized by the entire ninja village since he was a child. Sasuke was exterminated by his favorite brother since he was a child, and he bears a blood feud. Yeah, so when I'm with him, I feel very relaxed, and he's great. Naruto looked at the place where Hawking disappeared and murmured, "If I could be as powerful as Hawking, maybe I could bring Sasuke back last time. He is so powerful, more powerful than Sasuke." Sakura's eyes widened immediately. Hawking didn't seem very powerful to him. Naruto nodded. "His taijutsu is very strong, I feel he might be better than Sasuke." Sasuke was very strong, he had personally felt it in Orochimaru's base last time, but even though he was strong, there was no feeling that the gap was irreparable. But Hawking was different. During this period of time, when he was learning residual image boxing with Hawking at Miaomu Mountain, he was constantly sparring with Hawking. Although Hawking never really took action, he found that even if he tried his best and tried all means, he could not cause any harm to Hawking, and he could not even touch Hawking's clothes and feet. That feeling was just like the gap when he first saw Orochimaru during the Chunin exams. Therefore, he felt that Hawking's physical skills must be very strong. If he takes action, even Sasuke may not be his opponent. In particular, he had seen the scene where Hawking and Toad Guang were discussing. Toad Guang, who is slightly smaller than Toad Boss, holds 2 large knives more than 20 meters long. When competing with Hawking, he did not have the upper hand in terms of strength. On the other side, Sally thoughtfully took out his notes and started writing furiously. He was not trying to record the information about Hawking conveyed in the conversation between Naruto and Sakura, but wrote very seriously. The way to improve the bond between friends is to give more gifts and treat guests to dinner, and show that you are stronger than your friends. After reading in a book that giving nicknames to friends can enhance the relationship between friends, and then being beaten half to death by Sakura, he also learned to start looking for experience from some things around him. Just like today, he learned valuable experience from Hawking and planned to use it for experiments next time. But, what kind of gift should I give? 2003, December 25th, Christmas. Today everyone got up early, turned on the heater, turned on the TV, sat on the carpet in the living room, took out the big socks specially used to hold gifts from under the Christmas tree, and began the happiest part of Christmas, opening gifts. The Oligs not only prepared gifts for Wanda and Pietro, but also prepared gifts for Hawking. Because in their eyes, Hawking is still an immature child. Those gifts were of little value to Hawking now and were of no use, but he was still very happy and carefully collected them. After opening the gifts, the family happily sat in the living room and watched the Christmas special. In the afternoon, Hawking and Elena began to prepare the Christmas dinner for the evening. Hawking was responsible for cooking Chinese dishes, while Elena cooked Sokovian dishes. Hawking did not practice today, did not go to the company, and did not go to Konoha. He just wanted to spend a peaceful Christmas at home with his family. However, the tree wants to be quiet but the wind does not stop. Just as Hawking was quickly pounding the minced meat into the basin again and again, preparing to stew a lion's head later, the doorbell suddenly rang. "Who is it?" Pietro activated his power and quickly ran to the door, opened it, and then said in surprise, "Professor Aurora, why are you here? Is Hawking at home? I have an urgent matter with him." Storm asked with an anxious look on her face. "What's wrong, Professor Aurora?" Hawking, who heard the sound in the kitchen, suddenly appeared behind Pietro. Seeing Aurora's expression, he had an ominous premonition in his heart. There was an accident at the school. Magneto suddenly appeared with a group of people and took the professor away by force. Aurora said quickly. Hawking suddenly frowned. The professor has been taken away. Let's go back to school first. We'll tell you in detail on the way. With the strength of the Magneto Brotherhood of Mutants, it is basically impossible to take Professor X away by force. In addition to Magneto's helmet protection, the other mutants of the Brotherhood will be immobilized and controlled by Professor X the moment they encounter him. How could Magneto alone take away Professor X under the protection of so many X-Men? So there must be other factors involved. Pietro, I'm going back to school. If you can't come back in time in the evening, you can eat first without waiting for me. After telling Pietro, Hawking took off his apron and immediately flew towards the school with Storm. Professor Aurora, what's going on? Hawking asked Storm on the way to the mutant school. Storm didn't hide anything and told the whole story in detail. It turns out that all the professors from the school and the mutant students who stayed in the school were celebrating Christmas together in the hall. Suddenly, a space wormhole was opened, and Magneto appeared with several people, saying that he wanted to take Professor X away and complete their original dream together. One of them, a blue-skinned mutant who dressed strangely and claimed to be the god of mutants, made Professor. At that time, Magneto's abilities were much stronger than before, and none of them could break through. In this way, Professor X was grandly taken into the space wormhole and disappeared. It's a flash, no, it's the apocalypse. After listening to Storm's narration, Hawking's expression changed again. When he first heard about the space wormhole, he thought it was Magneto who had found the mutant Blink who could open the teleportation wormhole. But later when he heard that a strange blue-skinned mutant who claimed to be God was able to instantly restrain Professor X, and Magneto's abilities also increased significantly, he knew he was wrong. How powerful, Professor! Apart from the Phoenix Girl who has been lifted from the restrictions, there is only Apocalypse who is known as the ancestor of mutants. This is going to be troublesome. Guessing that it was the Apocalypse, Hawking became uneasy. According to what he learned while watching the movie, Apocalypse was the first mutant to appear 5,000 years ago. Because he was able to transfer his consciousness to other mutants, he gained their abilities and talents, and eventually ruled mankind. Later, when the consciousness was transferred to a mutant with the ability of self-healing and immortality, the enslaved humans betrayed and fell into a deep sleep. He remembered that the address where he was sleeping was a certain city in Egypt. He didn't have much memory of the specific city. But even if he remembered, he never planned to look for it. As soon as Apocalypse sees the sun, he can absorb energy and wake up. Why is he looking for that trouble? Unexpectedly, he would be found and awakened by Magneto now. After thousands of consciousness transfers, Apocalypse possesses thousands of mutant abilities. He is so powerful that he has almost no shortcomings. In the end of the movie, Jean exploded with the power of the Phoenix to kill her. To be honest, with his current fighting power, he is really not sure that he can kill Tianchi. The full-strength Phoenix power is at the level of the multiverse. His current combat power of more than 200, even with the Wukong template, is less than 300. At most, it is only at the planet level, not even the Heavenly Father level. But fortunately, today is not only Christmas, but also a full moon night. If he waits until night, he can transform into a giant ape. By then, his combat power will increase tenfold, and he may be able to fight against Apocalypse. However, he always had a vague feeling in his heart that something was not quite right. This is different from the movie. In the movie, the middle-aged Magneto fell into despair because his wife and daughter were killed by humans, and was persuaded by Apocalypse to become one of the 4 horsemen of Apocalypse. And now Magneto is a scheming and elderly Magneto. How can he so easily let Apocalypse, a mutant who has been around for more than 5,000 years, dominate all of this? And based on his understanding of Magneto, Magneto at this age is very cautious in doing things. He really wants Apocalypse to capture Professor X and transfer his consciousness into Professor. Then he shouldn't have cleared out the X-Men and the powerful man who could transform into a giant ape first before taking action. Instead he took away Professor X directly and blatantly. Isn't he afraid that they will destroy Apocalypse when it is transferred? Finally, he didn't believe that Magneto didn't know that he could transform into a giant ape on a full moon night. Although this information is only known to a few people such as Professor If you really don't know, is it a coincidence that it happened to be launched on a night with a full moon? It can't be because today is Christmas. Forget it, let's save Professor X first. He definitely cannot let Apocalypse acquire Professor X's abilities. With Apocalypse's powerful mental power, once he acquires Professor, even he would find it difficult to resist by then. However, this trip has both dangers and opportunities. If you can defeat Apocalypse, you will definitely gain a lot of justice points, and you may directly unlock a new protagonist template. Although Apocalypse does not intend to massacre the entire human race, it does require Magneto to activate the magnetic field to collapse the continental plates and return everything developed from the Bronze Age to its original state. Mutant School Conference Room. How's it going, Professor Hank? Have you found the professor's position? As soon as Hawking entered the door, he immediately asked the Beast. The Beast shook his head solemnly. No, Magneto knows us very well. The positioning installed on the professor's wheelchair was destroyed. Why did Magneto kidnap the professor? Does he want to use the professor's ability to exterminate the entire human race like before? Who is that blue-skinned guy? He can control the professor instantly. At this time, Wolverine slapped the table angrily. Having that experience before, it's hard not to let them think that way. I'm afraid it's not just Magneto this time. What Professor Auror told me reminded me of a legend I once saw accidentally. I wonder if you know Tianchi. Quote, Hawking said with an expression on his face. It's now time, and the information about Apocalypse must be shared. Apocalypse. Everyone looked confused. Obviously none of them had heard of this name. So Hawking quickly told him all the information he knew about Apocalypse. So this Apocalypse is more dangerous than Magneto. He can strengthen the abilities of mutants. It is estimated that Magneto and the mutants under his brotherhood have been strengthened. This time it will be a tough battle. There are such terrifying mutants in the world, so they are probably hiding in a city in Egypt. Hank quickly had a guess. Since Apocalypse's former base was in Egypt, there is a high probability that any plans will be launched in Egypt. Okay, so, we need a little help, let me make a call first. Hawking's mind turned around and he immediately took out his cell phone and dialed Nick Fury's number. Director Fury, this is bad, humanity is going to be doomed. As soon as the call was connected, the first words Hawking spoke made Nick Fury stunned. Mr. Hawking, today is Christmas, not April Fool's Day. Please don't make such a joke. I'm not kidding, the professor was kidnapped by Magneto. Hawking quickly told Nick Fury the relevant situation. When the apocalypse comes, this is not just a matter for mutants, but also for all mankind. To be more precise, mankind is much worse. When Apocalypse ruled mankind, at least some mutants with abilities similar to those of Apocalypse were relatively safe and had a relatively high status, while humans were only worthy of being slaves. So there is no reason for such a big thing to happen. They are the only ones worrying here, leaving Nick Fury, a guy who usually talks about maintaining world peace, idle. Captain Marvel, Captain Carter, Black Widow, Hawkeye and May, agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., plus potions and weapons that can restrain mutants' abilities, are also a big help. Especially Captain Marvel. A few years ago he couldn't even defeat the giant ape, so he can definitely be a big help. Moreover, he doesn't know exactly which city in Egypt Apocalypse and Magneto will start their operations in. He can also ask Nick Fury to help check. Are you sure Tianchi is as powerful as you say? After listening to the narration, Nick Fury's voice became much more solemn. Hawking replied decisively, maybe it's more powerful than what I said. You think I would joke with you about this kind of thing? If you don't believe it, all the teachers in the school are here. We can't all lie to you together. But I'm really not very good at sparing manpower now, Hydra. Nick Fury explained in a rare awkward tone. It turned out that after the last attack, he also launched a full-scale counterattack against Hydra. And because he has his wife, Captain Marvel, as his backing, Hydra, led by Pierce, is being defeated step by step, and is almost completely eliminated from S.H.I.E.L.D. But today, for some unknown reason, Hydra seemed to have gone crazy and actually started to launch inhumane terrorist attacks all over the world in revenge. This made him a little anxious for a while, and almost all the agents were sent to help suppress it. Even Captain Marvel was fighting fires in major cities around the world. If everyone stopped at this time to help Hawking and the others fight against Apocalypse, many people would probably die by then. Originally, because S.H.I.E.L.D. was infiltrated by Hydra led by Pierce, the International Security Council has lost a lot of confidence in S.H.I.E.L.D. and is considering whether to continue funding in the future. If S.H.I.E.L.D. cannot deal with the terrorist attacks caused by Hydra now, I believe that the International Security Council will no longer support S.H.I.E.L.D., and those original privileges will no longer exist. The most important thing is that the Apocalypse may not be as powerful as Hawking said. If we can use this to make the mutants suffer from internal fighting, then S.H.I.E.L.D. will be much better off. Although the Hydra crisis was solved this time, S.H.I.E.L.D.'s strength was also knocked back to before Liberation. From the original three-party clampdown, S.H.I.E.L.D. has become the weakest, which is not a good thing. Director Fury, you have to think about it. If Apocalypse's consciousness is really transferred to the Professor, then in cooperation with Magneto, the harm caused by Hydra's terrorist attack will not be comparable, and the entire human civilization will be destroyed. The relationship between them is very important, you have to weigh it yourself. Quote, Hawking was not a fool. He naturally guessed the little thoughts in Nick Fury's heart, and his tone became cold involuntarily. He finally understood why Nick Fury came up with the Avengers plan and connected the Avengers together to form the Avengers Alliance. However, it was Iron Man and Captain America who ultimately led the Avengers. Because compared to a superhero, Nick Fury is more of a politician and thinks too much about interests and gains and losses. In this way, Mr. Hawking, I will help you find the location of Magneto and the others as quickly as possible, and at the same time, I will get Captain Marvel to support you as quickly as possible. As an ally, even if S.H.I.E.L.D. is in a difficult situation now, it will definitely not leave its allies alone. Find the location and send it to me directly. Too lazy to listen to Nick Fury's chatter, Hawking hung up the phone directly. He knew very well that an old fox like Nick Fury could not change his mind with just a few words, so he simply stopped wasting time. To help find Magneto and Apocalypse, he believed that Nick Fury would do his best, but if he sent Captain Marvel over, he estimated that even if he did send Captain Marvel, he would definitely fight to the end. If they win, they will pretend to have just arrived. If they lose, Apocalypse will probably feel uncomfortable, and they will have a better chance of winning in a fight. Very good. Since you're doing this with me, don't blame me for being rude. After hanging up the phone with Nick Fury, Hawking thought for a moment and called again. First, he sent the location here to Peter, Venom and Jessica, asking them to come over quickly. He then contacted Jonah Jameson, the head of the Daily Bugle, and contacted the Green Goblin and the company's head of public relations. Let them spread the news of Apocalypse's destruction of the world as quickly as possible, no matter what method they use, after some corrections. It is important that everyone in the world knows about this crisis. At the same time, contact the most famous reporters in New York and ask them to come here. When the time comes, follow them and follow the reports in real time and broadcast live. Aren't you, S.H.I.E.L.D., unwilling to stand out? Well, let the League of Legends make a name for itself in this operation to save the world. Let all countries understand that when mankind faces such an irresistible crisis of annihilation, S.H.I.E.L.D. and the military of various countries are unreliable, and can only be saved by the superheroes of their League of Legends. If he does a good job this time, he will no longer need Nick Fury to help handle government-related matters in the future. And the revenue of League of Legends International will skyrocket as a result. Hawking, what do you want? The X-Men next to them also looked confused when they heard the phone calls made by Hawking. Nick Fury and the others understood this, but what were the manipulations behind it? You should all know that my purpose in founding League of Legends International is to use this superhero company to make the human public accept mutants. Originally, the Professor and I planned to take it step by step, recruiting some non-mutant superheroes first, and then slowly add mutant superheroes after they became famous. Now that we have this opportunity this time, let's take this opportunity to get it right in one step. When the reporters arrive later, please don't say that you are the X-Men from the mutant school, just say that you are the superheroes who recently joined League of Legends International, but you are mutants. Quote. Hawking explained slowly. In fact, Hawking's considerations are not complicated. What he wants to present to the public is not that the ancestor of mutants wakes up to rule mankind, and then another group of mutants defeats him. Such a result will only make the public think that this is an internal fight between mutants, and it will also affect innocent humans like them. Mutants are really terrible. What he wants is to weaken the concept of mutants. Let the public know that when villains like Apocalypse and Magneto appear on Earth, there will be righteous superheroes who protect mankind and defeat these villains. Some of these superheroes, like Peter and Jessica, gained superpowers by accident. Some were gifted with powers by gods, like Hawking, and there are mutants who are born with the ability to awaken. Therefore, mutants should not be scary freaks, but humans who are born with superpowers. They can also join the League of Legends International Company, which many people dream of joining, and become superheroes. As long as they are portrayed well, the public will immediately change their view of mutants after this incident. Half an hour later, Hawking received a text message from Nick Fury. According to the records retrieved, all members of the Brotherhood of Mutants went to Cairo, Egypt this morning. We have found their location. The whole army is going to attack. Putting down his mobile phone, Hawking led all members of the X-Men, League of Legends, and more than a dozen reporters, boarded the X-Fighter, and flew to Cairo as quickly as possible. In the cabin of the plane, more than a dozen reporters eagerly pointed their microphones and cameras at Hawking, who was wearing golden armor, and began to ask various questions crazily. Mr. Flash, may I ask, is the news about Apocalypse's world destruction that just spread true? Mr. Flash, is this plane newly purchased by League of Legends? Why have I never seen it before? Mr. Flash, besides Spider-Man, Venom and Flying Knight, who are these people behind you? Facing reporters' questions, Hawking calmly answered. The news of Tianqi's destruction is true, and this heroic fighter is also a transport aircraft just developed by the company. As for the new faces here, they are all new superheroes we have recruited and undergone rigorous training. This is Storm, who can control lightning and storms, this is Cyclops, who can shoot heat rays like Superman, and this. After Hawking's introduction, the reporters also began to interview the X-Men one by one. The authenticity of Apocalypse's world destruction is still uncertain, but being able to get interviews with these superheroes in advance is definitely worth a special trip for them this Christmas. Meanwhile, on a high slope outside Cairo, Egypt, Magneto took all the enhanced members of the Brotherhood of Mutants behind him and said to Apocalypse, "The destructive power of human nuclear weapons is quite powerful. If this hidden danger cannot be solved before action, I am afraid it will be very troublesome. I believe that human selfishness should not mind sacrificing a city to attack us." Quote. Hearing this, Tianqi showed a trace of disdain on his face. "I didn't expect that these slaves would actually become their masters during the 5,000 years I have been sleeping. Don't worry, they will soon find that the weapons they are proud of will all disappear, and they will have no power to resist." Quote. He reached out and touched the unconscious Professor X's forehead, and his spirit began to invade Professor X's brain and control Professor X's abilities. In an instant, all countries with nuclear bombs on the entire Earth experienced a terrible incident that almost stopped the hearts of the senior officials. That is, all the nuclear bombs were launched without any orders from them. You must know that there are now more than 10,000 nuclear bombs in the world. If they were detonated together, it would be a disaster for all living things on the Earth. Fortunately, these nuclear bombs only took off but did not fall. In the end, they were all launched into the universe. In other words, at this moment, all countries on the planet no longer have a single nuclear bomb. Okay, we can start planning. Withdrawing his hand, Apocalypse showed a confident smile on his face. Professor X's mental resistance is so strong that even he cannot control it for a long time. Therefore, the best way is to transfer consciousness, so that he can completely take over Professor X's ability as his own, and then control the entire human race at will. There will never be an uprising by human slaves again. As for why not just detonate all nuclear bombs and destroy the entire human race? What he wants is to continue to rule humans as he did 5,000 years ago and turn them into his slaves. If he kills them all, what's the point of being a polished commander? So he only needs Magneto to use the magnetic field to destroy the entire modern civilization of mankind so that they have no ability to resist him. He raised his hands and began to face the city of Cairo in front of him, activating his ability to control sand and rocks. Under Apocalypse's power, Countless modern buildings in the center of Cairo instantly collapsed and turned into grains of sand, which gathered together and gradually formed a supergiant pyramid engraved with various runes. This giant pyramid is so big that it occupies more than half of the entire city of Cairo. And this scene also made Magneto behind him freeze in his eyes. He knew Tianchi was powerful, but he didn't expect it to be so powerful. Fortunately, he was prepared. He raised his head and looked at the sky, which was already getting darker. He said to Tianchi, "Let Mystique lead people to protect you and complete the ritual in the pyramid. I will use all my power to disrupt the magnetic field and destroy human civilization." "Okay, go do your thing. After the plan is completed, you will be the leader of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse in the future." Tianchi nodded, then controlled the unconscious professor and flew towards the pyramid. After Apocalypse left, Magneto ordered Mystique, "After the fight starts in a while, be careful to preserve our strength and let the X-Men and Apocalypse fight slowly." After explaining Mystique, Magneto also flew up, found a secret place, and began to fully activate his abilities. At least in terms of destroying human modern civilization, he and Apocalypse have the same idea. However, it is impossible for him to let someone like Tianchi rule the entire Earth. It's not because of ambition, but because his ideal has always been to liberate mutants so that mutants can no longer be persecuted by humans and can live happily in the future. He even once wanted to kill all humans and leave only mutants on the Earth. But Apocalypse is different. Apocalypse is a dictator and an emperor. Human beings are slaves in the eyes of Apocalypse, and mutants are also slaves in the eyes of Apocalypse, but they are slaves with a higher status, and as long as they have new abilities that he likes, their bodies and abilities will be taken away. This is not what he wants to see. So for Tianchi, he is just using him, and after using him, he will naturally kill him. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.